So for members of the committee and for the viewing public, we have both legislation today as well as an operational review. So today is going to be a hefty day. We will pause at some point for a break around lunch, but we're going to be as efficient as possible. And again, we will get rolling, be efficient, and please keep questions and comments to the piece in front of us and then to the operational review. Director, come on up. So we're going to start with legislation this morning. Director. 10:56. I don't. I'm sorry. One second. 991. Oh, for the. Yeah. 10:56. The guest. Then bring up 10:56. Yeah, we will run a public comment after the pieces this morning. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you. The agenda is a suggestion. Thank you. Oh, got it. Okay. Okay. Do you want to just run this now, actually? Miss Pinckney, do you want to run her now? She's on the one. Okay. I'm sorry. Because we've got one folks signed up for a public comment, we'll run it before the legislation, but we'll keep you here at the table. Reverend Pinckney, come on up. So we're going to have a public comment first, and then we'll go into the first piece of legislation. Right here. Come on up.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How we doing?
I'm blessed by the best.
All right.
North, south, east, and west.
All right, Reverend, you got 3 minutes.
Your agenda items, I'm going to start there.
All right.
I do have a couple of concerns,
Okay.
and I never overcome racism with more racism, but I do have a challenge with every time I come here, there's always all white people on this side of this table making decisions for a predominantly black-dominated city. And I stated this, black, brown, and multiracial. And we're not a minority. We're the majority in the city. And I see that you have all these European companies doing business in our city for our transportation, and that's a challenge for me. Because when I look at the east side of Cleveland and our transportation system, it's not a very pleasant sight. There was money that was allocated for the repair and reconstruction of East 79th Street, 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been fighting for that for about 10 years. They don't even have elevators. It's anti-dated. It's a mess over there. And there was a block grant granted to East 79th Street, and transportation was not fixed on East 79th and Kinsman. As you can tell, I'm part European myself, so I have European family members. But I do have a challenge when I have only Europeans having contracts in the city of Cleveland for transportation and any of the other mobility concerns, especially with the fact that disabled people and the mobility items are not addressed as they should be. I also ask that when you do this legislation from here on out, I ask that your language would be more clear, because when you have language like various employment, certain city, that's very vague, and I would like to know, are people like me and my male counterparts going to be getting these contracts and this employment and these opportunities for contracts with you to sit at the table? Those are some of my questions and my concerns this morning, and women are not minorities either. So is there a way that you can answer anything for me? Because I don't know any of these people, and I probably do through my parents because of my family that I come from, the Pinckney family, which is a very well-known family, and the Butts family. But I saw some people turn their noses at me when I came in the door because they don't know me. That doesn't give them the right to do that. And we're going to have some more diversity at this table for people that look like me and my male counterparts for decisions pertaining to our transportation.
Thank you, Reverend Pinckney. And I'll just note that the director, here is our airport director right here. He is going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in his remarks when we talk about the operational review. So he will address that.
And like I said, I want to see some people that look like me and my male counterparts for these contracts.
Got it. Yep.
And I don't want certain and vague language in communicating with our community.
Thank you, Reverend
Thank
Pinckney.
you. Have a good day.
And the director will talk about that in his remarks.
And I'd like to have his contact information because people give me their cards and then when I leave, they don't answer the phone. So I'd like to have some relationships with people. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for our airport folks, if we get a good airport contact for Reverend Pinckney, please, that are sitting in the back. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, that concludes a public comment. Thank you, Reverend Pinckney, for coming down this morning. All right, Director, we're going to start with ordinance number 1056-2024 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor and the commissioner of purchases and supplies to sell certain city-owned properties no longer needed for the city's public use located on Brook Park and Old Grayton Roads near Nassau Glen Research Center to Nassau Park LLC for purposes of developing hotels and restaurants. Director, before we kick off, Councilman Slife, would you like to be on this piece? Sure. Madam Clerk, please add Councilman Slife to 1056. This is in his ward. Director, floor is yours. Good morning. Mike, it's on. Press the button. There you go.
That's better. Good morning, Chair McCormack and members of the committee. Appreciate seeing you all today. This item is requesting the sale of city-owned property no longer needed for public use, which is located directly across Brook Park Road from CLE. There are 3 separate parcels totaling just under 3 acres. The developer, Nassau Park LLC, currently operates 2 properties adjacent to this land and proposes to develop hotels and restaurants on the site. It would be a benefit both to the local community as well as visitors, including airport customers. The appraised fair market value is $140,000. We've enjoyed the process of working with the owners, and they are here today. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Dennis Kramer, Assistant Director of Development.
Assistant Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First off, just want to one thing point out, this piece is for the sale of this property. It's not approval of any kind of development or anything yet, but it is for the sale of the property. I would also like to note this is on Brook Park Road, north of the airport. These are 3 smaller parcels that we have determined that will not be needed for any long-term use for master planning purposes in our airport.
How you predict my questions, sir.
I've been around for a while now with you, sir. So yeah, this will not inhibit any of our future planning, and this is some development that we're looking forward to on the north end. With us today here we have Ms. Susan Lapines. She will talk a little bit more about the development that they're planning for these parcels.
All right, Ms. Lapine, and for our visitors, please speak into the mics. Oh, that doesn't have a pad on it. Can someone give Ms. Lapine a different, and press the button to make sure it's green?
This one's on.
Yeah, sometimes they get muffled if they don't have the pad.
Oh.
Because we've got the viewing public tuning in. So press the button right there until it turns green. Did it turn green? Councilman Casey, will you give her a microphone that actually works? There you go. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Lapine, you've got the floor.
All right, thank you so much. We're delighted to be here. We appreciate your giving us this opportunity. We have met with Councilman McCormick and Councilman Slife, and so they have an understanding of what's involved. And Mr. Francis, Bryant Francis has helped us as well, John Hoos, and we have David Bowen with us, who has been the architect and helpful advisor as we've approached this project. You may be wondering who we are. I'll give you a quick background on that. My husband, Hal Lapine, was a developer and a real estate investor. He passed away, sadly, 2 years ago. And I'm doing my best to pull things together and move forward, and we're actually finding it's very exciting. My son, Richard Marshall, is working with me full-time. And about 5 years ago, we completed the development of 2 buildings that we had purchased from NASA. We bought them on a government auction, and they are right across the street from Nassau Glen and sort of across the street also from the Aviator, if you think about the location. Those buildings have now been converted into one of them into apartments. We have 84 apartment units that are fully leased, and we have a hotel that's called the Orbit, and that hotel is a Wyndham brand, and it's also doing very well. Our development partners are the Series Group. So you see our name, Series Lapine Team. The Series Group is David Chrisofi, who lives on the west side, and his family. And they have a wonderful, long history of developing hotels successfully in this area, as well as other projects. That first development was a $45 million historic redevelopment project. As I say, it's up and running. And next, we purchased 8 acres from the city in 2019. We thought we had bought what sort of looked like a big rectangle that would allow us to, we weren't sure do what, but it made sense to buy it at the time. Our plans quickly came together to put 2 hotels and some outbuilding restaurants on the other lots. What we discovered about a year ago, perhaps, was that we didn't quite get the whole parcel that we thought we had. There were 3 small parcels in the property we bought that were not included in the purchase. So that's what we're here to ask you to allow us to go ahead and purchase, because the development plan certainly requires having that land, and because I think we're all excited about what we're proposing. So my son Richard is here to give you a real quick slideshow. It's got about 8 slides, and then you can ask us any questions that you've got.
Yes, on a packed day, we appreciate brevity. So
Okay.
thank you.
I can make that work.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see if we can make this. There we go. Just starting with a wide shot of the location. As you can see, it's directly across from the airport and NASA Glen. The K and the L buildings, you can see, it's rather small, but we'll zoom in here. These are the parcels highlighted in yellow that we kind of need to round out our development. We own as mentioned before, we own the 8-acre parking lot that you can sort of see. All of the stuff that's not highlighted. Also, just to the left there, the building shaped like a K, that's the Centaur Apartments that we owned and redeveloped. It's 84 units and 100% occupied. It's been a really great project for us. So the thought is this is basically phase 2 of NASA Park, which we actually, the formal name will be Voyager Park. We're not allowed to use the NASA name. The entity is called NASA Park, so we're not going to change that. But the development will be known as Voyager Park. And we do have permission from NASA to do that. As you can see, having the full square there will really make a big difference. I don't have a laser pointer, but...
So it's this land that we thought we bought the whole thing, and in fact...
We bought the 8 acres in 2019, and
We're not
yeah,
but you can see that you really would need that to make it sort of
yeah.
this like, I'll stand here in case I have
Okay, yeah, if that's helpful. So this is a tighter shot of the larger parcel, which, as you can see, is it's vacant land. There's quite a bit of vegetation there, but it's not being used for anything else, essentially. And here's another shot of one of the corner small parcels that we'll use for signage. Here's the site plan. Our plan is to add 2 hotels. The first hotel will be a Wyndham product.
hotel here, and this is the section that we need to buy. Hotels are
Yeah.
placed on that.
So the first hotel is planned to be a water walk by Wyndham. It's a new Wyndham product, extended stay. It's about 130 rooms. Really exciting new concept. We were just in Parsippany last week speaking to the executives at Wyndham, and we're very excited about working with them, and they've been a big help so far. The next hotel will likely be another extended stay. The point behind our development is to support the growth of the airport, especially as the airport undergoes the $3.5 billion renovation that is underway really at this point. We had not, and also to provide amenities in our 2 outlots that you can see down there in orange. There's our water walk. Yeah, click, click. It supports longer term stays. The second hotel is likely to be possibly a Marriott product. Spring Hill Suites has been one that we've discussed. One of the restaurant properties, we're looking for sort of a throwback to tie into the NASA ethos, especially as the Artemis project kind of comes together here in the next year or two. It's all sort of tied into the nostalgic historic redevelopment sort of overall vibe, if you will. And then the second restaurant property that we have in mind, we are hoping to get something like a Portillo's or a Fatburger, which would be a first to the area product. Portillo's in particular is some of you may have had it if you've been to Chicago, or they have them in Illinois and other places. We're working on that. That's part of the work that's still to come. And lastly, I mean, we have some eco-friendly features planned. There's a green area right in the middle. I can show you back on the site plan. There's a green space right in the middle that will be kept as green space is the plan. Just a quick economic snapshot. This is for the entire development. The hotel investment, both hotels will be, just over $52 million. The drive-through fast food is about $1.5 million. This is the whole project, just to give you an idea of what these extra parcels are going to enable. And the total investment is going to be close to $60 million, bringing the total to about 110 for both projects, phases 1 and 2, essentially. Let's see here. That might be our last slide. Okay. As you can see, what we're really trying to do is bring more amenities to the airport and to NASA Glenn. Frankly, those guys need a lot more amenities than what they have, and more places to stay and all of that. So that is our plan, and having these extra lots will enable that to happen.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Really appreciate it. All right. So before I kick it over to Councilman Slife, who's our vice chair as well as the councilperson on record in this area, just a couple quick questions, comments. To get through these, as you kind of already mentioned, this does not interfere, assistant director, with the airport plans. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. These are being sold at fair market value. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct as well.
Okay, thank you. Director, one question from the airport's perspective. With the demolition of the hotel on airport property, which we all supported, does this help meet a need kind of adjacent to the airport that may be there for travelers that are looking for a nearby stay?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I expect it will. When you survey the area surrounding the airport, the level of product and the availability of hotel inventory is not very great, frankly, for an airport the size of Cleveland Hopkins. And so I think that, combined with the overall location of this parcel being also adjacent to the interstate, being next to NASA Glenn, and then, of course, being adjacent to Hopkins, I think that makes it very strong in terms of its potential to generate new business. And certainly, I believe the airport would benefit from that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Sure.
And to Ms. Lapine, I love the design, the retro look. Are you all committed to that? Is that aspirational, or can you speak a little bit
No,
more?
I think we're committed to that.
Okay.
It just makes sense. It's kind of fun.
And are you able to use the NASA logo? I mean, it looks really cool in there. It really complements the work they do. Were you not able to use it?
I don't think we're going to be able to use the
that's a
NASA
shame.
logo. That's
Yeah.
going to be, we've had some discussions with NASA, and they're great to work with, but they have some pretty clear rules that
Okay.
they enforce pretty vigorously
Well,
on
I'm
that stuff.
sure there's other ways you can implement
Absolutely.
space exploration. And
Absolutely. With
being-
Voyager Park, we really feel like we're tapping into that NASA.
Voyager.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
the Voyager program being.
Wonderful, thank you. And I know that Councilman Slife has been working with a lot of partners on really thinking critically around the airport and how to bring in more economic development through the Aerozone Alliance. And on that, I'm going to pass it to you, Councilman Slife.
Yeah, and I will keep it brief just to say that I'm very supportive of this. It's worth noting that since we've kind of transitioned from the hub era to the airport currently, there's such a large percentage of flights that leave early in the morning that it's not something that maybe people on this side of the table would feel a need to get a hotel room. But if you're coming from Ashtabula or something, then wanting to be closer for your 6 a.m. flight, we don't really have that right now. So I think in addition to that and meeting kind of the needs of NASA, whether it's for hotels or people just grabbing lunch if they work in the area, it is sort of a dead zone right now for those options. So I think being able to bring this to Brook Park Road, leverage the very successful projects next door, which coincidentally are not in Cleveland, but we will leverage the success there to be able to have this retail development in Cleveland to make sure that we are not missing out on an opportunity to do what's best for the city. So I thank you very much, and thank you to the airport, thank you to the team. Just
you.
incredibly happy to be supportive.
Thank you, Councilman. Do I have any additional questions on 1056-2024? Yes, Councilwoman Moore.
Again, in the spirit of brevity, I'll be quick, but I'm just curious, for your fully leased 84 unit, do you have a sense of how many of those folks are either employed through NASA Glen or through the airport, through the chair?
That's a good question, and I'll tell you, I don't have those numbers with me, but I believe we do have them. And I think it is a mix. I mean, the people who are living near the airport, of course, it's natural that many of them are working there. But also, I mean, there are situations where companies that fly in and out like to have an apartment for their employees who are coming in frequently. And also retired pilots who love watching planes take off and land.
Wow.
And you can do that from those apartments. And,
An untapped market.
you never know.
There you
Right,
go.
but I could get numbers to you on that.
I was just curious,
Right.
just having a sense of how much it's just pulling in people who are looking for, a higher quality apartment versus people who are employed at the facilities nearby.
Right.
That was my only question, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Moore. Councilman Bishop?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I got a couple questions through the chair to the director. In the executive summary on number 3 under justification and / urgency, the proceeds from the sale of the property will help defray costs to the airlines that operate at Cleveland. Can you explain why the proceeds would defray costs for the airlines in this case? Director?
Yes, through the chair to the councilperson. Yes, because we are a fully residual airport, and what that means is that the airlines are the stopgap for any amount of funding that we need as the airport to operate on an annualized basis. So the more non-airline revenue that we generate at the airport, then the less dependence that we have on the airlines. So essentially, this would be supporting the operation of the airport in increased non-airline revenue. So that is the way in which it would benefit the airlines that operate at Cleveland who are signatory carriers.
Okay. In Section 2 of the legislation, the Board of Control, it says in Section 2 of the legislation about the Board of Control determining the fair market value of these parcels of land. Is the Board of Control, are they in the real estate, are they authorized to appraise this land that's at the airport? That's my question. Are they in that business? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilperson. So there was a third-party appraisal done by airport third-party appraisal, and a recommendation will be made to the Board of Control on that fair market value.
Okay, so they go on the recommendation of a licensed real estate in the aeronautical business.
Through the chair, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Bishop. Any additional Councilman Casey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Lapine, you guys have a Wyndham, water walk by Wyndham. Have you had the conversation with the Wyndham on how this would affect their other hotel that's on West 150th, which is probably less than 2 miles from this project?
As my son said, we were with the Wyndham people a week ago today,
Yeah.
I think, in New Jersey. We did not discuss that specifically. The Wyndham people are very excited about this new opportunity, and they are also the flag for the hotel that we just opened, a year and a half ago. Their market studies show that there is a demand for more hotel space.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Councilman Casey. Any additional questions on 1056? Hearing none, 1056-2024 stands approved. Please sign. Thank you. And we've got another guest. Blake Cleveland, are you here for a piece? All right, you here for 991? All right, we're going to hopscotch a little bit here, guys. My
Certainly.
apologies.
Yes, sir.
I have one mocap piece. So, all right, Ordinance 991-2024. You're welcome to stay or sit back, whatever you'd like. This is on the mobility side of this committee. So, by Councilmember McCormick, emergency ordinance to amend section 514.04 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as enacted by ordinance number 243, passed May 9th, 2011, and sections 514.01, 514.02, 514.07, enacted by ordinance number 88410, passed August 18th, 2010, relating to temporary occupancy permits for streetscape amenities for the public right-of-way and fees for bicycle rack permits. Council O'Leary, would you kick us off?
Sure, through the chair to the council members. You have a legislative summary on your tablets. This ordinance amends Chapter 514 to prospectively exempt bicycle racks from permit application fees and renewal fees. It does not exempt them from insurance, indemnification, and other requirements. It specifically provides that no permit application fee or renewal fee shall be required for only bicycle racks. The current permit application fee is $160 and the annual renewal fee is $110. City Council and the city have promoted bicycle use for transportation and recreation, as evidenced by passage of the Complete and Green Streets Ordinance and the city's Climate Action Plan. The city wants to encourage more Clevelanders to ride bikes and businesses to provide bicycle racks for their use. Portland, Oregon is an example of a city that does not charge a fee for bicycle racks. And Cleveland would be the first in Ohio to prioritize bicycle rack installation by eliminating permit and renewal fees.
Thank you so much. Commissioner, how are we doing? Any questions or comments on this ordinance, sir?
To the chair, no, we support it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Van Sickle, introduce yourself to the group, please, and provide any testimony on this piece, please.
Yeah, my name's Jacob Van Sickle. I'm Executive Director at Bike Cleveland. I've met many of you, rode bikes with many of you. Thanks for those that joined us. I know Councilman Casey likes to bring it up a lot. We're certainly in support of this ordinance. Those of us that ride bikes know that when we get to our destination, if there isn't a secure place to lock your bike, it can be a little bit disorienting in knowing where to park it, so you can make sure you have your ride back when you return. We pulled some data from June 2023 to June 2024. Only one permit was pulled and paid for a bike rack installation in the city of Cleveland. We certainly know more have been installed. We also work a lot with community organizations. Like recently, we sold a rack to the Legal Aid Society. We sell racks to local businesses, and the fee and the recurring payment of a fee to install a bike rack outside your business is a limiting factor for many businesses that often results in a bike rack not being installed. So really what this legislation will do is help encourage businesses to make that investment, purchase a rack, and install it. And the city of Cleveland still required to go through the permitting process so the city knows where it's being installed and that it's being installed in an appropriate place. but kind of overcomes that barrier. And one thing I like to note when I say this is, our local businesses don't have to pay for an on-street parking spot in front of their business, so having us make them pay for a bike rack, which is a public good, doesn't sit well with me. So we hope that this ordinance advances and we can hopefully see a lot more bike racks installed in front of our small businesses.
Thank you, Director Van Sickle. And I'll just say that I wasn't aware before this ordinance that there was a recurring fee every year for a streetscape amenity. It seems like a bench, like you'd have to pay for a bench every year almost. I mean, I know they're not the same thing, but they're both amenities for folks to use in the general public. It seems very odd that that was the case to start with. The other thing I would note, it's not a part of this legislation, but from a policy perspective, is I think we need to look at the parking lot requirement for bike parking, because right now we require parking lots to put bike racks in spots in lots, and it seems kind of counterintuitive. I ride my bike downtown a lot, and I would never think to go so instead of requiring them in the lot, maybe we require them as a component outside, but that's a different policy. I just wanted to touch on that as well. But this is to, again, as was noted, not require the kind of annual fees for installed bike racks, still having to go through the permitting process and all of that as well. This went through Municipal Services and Properties. Councilman Bishop? Okay. Any additional questions on 991-2024? Councilman Moore?
Just that, Chair, if it's amenable to you, I'd love to be added as a co-sponsor. This is something we dealt with when we were working with Never Say Dive and some other projects in my ward, and I fully support getting rid of this annualized fee because, frankly, no one's doing it anyways. So this is a good step. I'd love to be a co-sponsor.
Madam Clerk, do you have that noted? Thank you. Okay, any additional questions on 991-2024? Hearing none, 991-2024 stands approved. Please sign. Thank you all so much. Okay, back to our list, Director. We're going to kick off with 1050-2024 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to exercise the second option to renew contract number PS 2022-0252 with Korn Ferry U.S. to provide professional aviation recruitment services for the Department of Port Control. Director.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We are requesting to exercise a one-year option with Korn Ferry for the purposes of providing professional recruitment services to Port Control. This firm is currently being used to recruit for the 4 assistant director positions, which are currently vacant. They cover marketing, communications, and customer experience, business development and revenue, all operations divisions, and chief of staff. Recruitment for these positions will continue into 2025, and we also want to have the ability to utilize this contract for other recruitments as appropriate. We've been satisfied with Korn Ferry services thus far and would like that relationship to continue for another year. We request approval this morning.
Thank you, sir. So the anticipated cost of $100,000 a year, is that the same cost as the contract is held throughout its term?
To the chair, yeah, that's correct.
No change in the cost?
That's the cap. Chair.
All righty.
Yes.
Director, obviously we want to get these positions filled as soon as possible. Do you feel like this organization is meeting your expectations to get your building fully staffed?
That's
for their focus. For their
Yes,
focus.
sir.
I understand.
Yes, exactly. Yes, sir.
They're not responsible for the whole airport. I get
Correct,
that.
correct.
But for their focus, do you feel like they're doing what up to your expectations?
Yes, sir. I mean, their main focus is on higher level positions. We actually have another piece coming today that is intended, I would say, more for mid-level searches. But yes, for the efforts thus far, they're doing a good job for us. We are making some progress, and we're expecting to have new members of the team joining in first quarter of the new year.
Great. That's wonderful. Because I know the 2 sitting next to you are sick of doing 3 jobs a person.
Oh, my goodness.
So.
And to the chair, this is the contract that brought us our director.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Oh, wonderful. All right. Very good. All right. Option to renew with Korn Ferry U.S. 1050-2024. What questions do I have? Hearing none, 1050-2024 stands approved. Please sign. 1052, 2024, Director by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into a lease agreement with Prospect International Airport Services Corporation for the lease of space located in the passenger terminal building at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport to support their wheelchair operations and other ancillary services for Delta Airlines and other airlines for a period of 2 years with 3 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you pretty much said it all. We are looking to enter into a new lease with an existing tenant, Prospect International Airport Services Corporation, for a lease of 500 square feet of in-terminal space to support their operations as a third-party provider to Delta and other airlines at Cleveland Hopkins, and we request your approval today.
Thank you, sir. You and the airlines are happy with their services to date?
In terms of them being in good standing and a good tenant, we are satisfied with Prospect at this time, sir.
And these are wheelchair operations?
That is correct.
So the critical operation of getting folks around the airport that have mobility issues? Is that
Correct. They would provide services. Typically, they are reserved in advance through the airlines, not always, but that's the most efficient way to utilize their services. But yes, to get customers perhaps from the curb to the ticket counter through security to the gate, and in the reverse to from an arriving flight to baggage claim in the curb.
And they're the current operator at the airport, is that correct?
They are one of the current operators.
That's right, one of the current operators.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What questions do I have about wheelchair operations at the airport? Councilman Slife.
Just for clarification, is this 500 square feet of additional space or space that they're already using?
Through the chair to the vice chair, this is for existing space that they are currently leasing. We're just looking to continue their lease in the lease of the existing space for a new term.
Okay. As a follow-up, within the terminal, maybe excluding D, is it worth asking for a kind of a breakdown of unused space, or as it seems like we're pretty tight, is it effectively zero?
We certainly can provide that information. We do have a high utilization of space, both public space and sort of behind the scenes space, operational space. And yes, we certainly can provide an analysis or breakdown to show what's available versus currently leased.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up and to the committee members, about a month ago, Councilman McCormick, the director, and a number of others, we went on a trip to Pittsburgh to go see they're going through a terminal modernization plan. And one of the things that really, it was a great trip, but a thing that I took away that I thought theoretically could be an easy win is they have an on-site child care facility. So when we talk about recruiting people to work for Port Control or just recruiting people to work for the airport for a concessionaire or something, that'd be a really, I think, excellent offering. But if we were to put out an RFP to try to find someone to operate a comparable facility, we'd obviously need to have the space for it. So I think that I will say it's a loaded question just to understand how much space we even have. If we're trying to think of new things we could do, are we able to do them, knowing our current space limitations?
Through the chair to the vice chair, that is correct. And also the location of the space, what it's suitable for, how much contiguous space there is for various needs. So a lot of variables, but certainly a fair question. I appreciate you asking about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional questions about new lease on wheelchair space at the airport? Hearing none, 1052, 2024 stands approved. Please sign. Ordinance number 1053, 2024 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to employ one or more consultants or one or more firms of consultants to provide professional services for various employment-related services for the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year, with 3 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director. 1053.
Mr. Chair, this item is requesting services similar to those provided by Quinn Ferry, as I alluded to just a few moments ago. We'd like to have flexibility in the providers of these services, as some may have more of an expertise in certain areas of airport placements than others, and it's also possible that existing client searches will limit the ability of any one firm to accommodate all our ongoing needs. Services would include developing outreach strategies, and advertising for recruitment, evaluation, and recommendation of potential candidates for certain positions within Port Control. This contract, as you mentioned, would be for a period of 1 year with 3 one-year options to renew, and we ask for your approval today.
Thank you, Director. This is a $300,000 a year request, is that correct?
That is correct, because it's possible that we would be doing multiple searches.
And it's up,
we
I'm sorry,
wanna have
up
that
to
flex-
300,
Up to
meaning
exactly.
you don't have to spend.
That
okay.
is correct. Yes, sir.
And Director, how will you measure success with this organization that is selected?
Well, I think the success would be measured by the breadth of candidates that are brought forward, also by the ultimate placement of those candidates, and the responsiveness of the firm, quite frankly. I think that's also a measure in terms of them being able to actually accommodate your needs, to work with you on a certain timeline, to answer the questions that you have, and also looking at what their track record is in this space, I think also is something that we would be looking to consider in bringing on one or more additional services to provide recruitment efforts for
Okay.
us.
And Director, you pay out what you use on this, is that correct?
That's correct. It would be sort of a negotiated rate. It could be on a per placement basis, but yes, and that's why it would be up to and not exceeding the $300,000 annually.
Okay. And my final question, Director, do they, if someone's interested in working for the airport, they don't live in Northeast Ohio, do these types of firms ever engage with someone like Destination Cleveland? If someone says, hey, I'm interested in coming there, well, what are the neighborhoods like? What is the art scene? I mean, I guess, because obviously if you're moving here, you're going to be living here and living within our community. So do they ever talk about those items too?
Fantastic question to ask, Mr. Chair. So I can tell you from previous experience with various firms for opportunities that I've pursued, the answer is yes. I mean, we also, I would say, would make sure that that relationship is in place. But yes, typically these firms do work with local entities that can educate candidates about the area, give them a sense of what the community is like from a housing perspective and otherwise. So yes, they typically do extend, if you will, those services to provide that type of insight to prospective candidates.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions on 1053-2024? Hearing none, 1053-2024 stands approved. Please sign. Okay, 1077-2024 by Councilmembers McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into amendment to the lease by way of concession of number 67743 with BAA USA, Inc., doing business as Fraport Cleveland LLC for the lease, management, design, and construction of retail merchandise, food, beverage, and service concessions for the Department of Port Control facilities to extend the termination date of the agreement for a period of 1 year. Director.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Port Control is requesting authority to amend the existing agreement with our master concessionaire for a period of 1 year. We came before you last fall with a request to extend the agreement with Fraport Cleveland, Inc. for a period of 1 year, as we were still in discussions with our airlines surrounding a new airline use and lease agreement, which relates to our ongoing discussions around the future terminal modernization development program. We felt it was in our best interest at that time to delay the RFP process until we had better direction surrounding the future of our terminal program, which would inform on the needs of our terminal services, including concessions. While we have made good progress and have more clarity surrounding the TMDP, we are not quite at the point of being ready to issue the RFP for these services at CLE. However, we are confident that we will do so in spring 2025 and have been communicating that both with Fraport as well as the airport concessions community. That will allow ample time to complete the RFP selection process and have the new agreement in place by the end of this 1 year extension. We've also met with representatives of Unite Here and agreed to language for the purposes of this extension related to labor peace. Fraport shall require each new concessionaire that enters the program during the extension period to maintain a labor peace agreement with each labor union that requires one or requests one to ensure the continuity of services at the airport that labor disruptions could otherwise impact. Fraport representatives are in the room today, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you, Director. So we're bumping out 1 year to buy some time to figure ourselves out with concessions at the airport. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate everyone working together with organized labor.
Absolutely.
I know Councilman Moore and Slife were involved in those conversations as well, which it appears that everyone is on the same page with that, which is
Yes.
great. So this is a 1-year extension of the concessions contract, or that's not the right terminology. Extend the termination date is the terminology for a period of 1 year, so that we can have a larger conversation about the concession contract at the airport. Comments, questions, concerns on 1077-2024? Hearing none, 1077-2024 stands approved. Please sign. Okay, 1171-2024 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request authorizing the purchase by one or more requirement contracts of fencing, gates, guardrails, labor, and materials for the repair and maintenance of gates, fencing, and guardrails and other related items, including installations if necessary for the various divisions of the Department of Port Control for a period of 2 years with 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Department of Port Control. Wild that fence, gates, and guardrails are needed to fix fences, gates, and guardrails.
Imagine
Director.
that. Yes, sir.
1171.
So I am asking Christine Gilmartin, my Assistant Director of Finance, to present this item today. Thank
Assistant
you.
Director, floor is yours.
Okay, to the chair. We are seeking a new contract as our current contract for these services will expire in June of 2025. And as Cleveland Hopkins International Airport is surrounded by 15.5 miles of perimeter fence, which is required to provide security to the airfield pursuant to the FAA and Department of Homeland Security directives. So we are seeking to enter a requirements contract that would begin next year so we do not have a gap in getting the fence, if needed, repaired. And we put an approximate amount of $75,000. However, that's just an amount that we plan on putting in 2025, being that it will be a requirements contract. We would have the ability to increase that.
I'll say that's it?
No,
70
right.
Yeah, I was like, that does not seem like
That's
enough
just the amount
money.
of funding that they put in for. But if needed, we could put more additional funding because it is a requirements contract.
Okay, I was going to say that does not seem like enough money.
We just finished our guardrail installation.
Okay.
So we're hoping that we're not going to need as much
A ton of money.
work done.
Got it.
And I say that because it's made a difference
Yep.
that you can't get through to the funds.
Oh, good. Oh, really good.
Yes.
Wonderful. Questions on requirements contract for fencing, gates, and guardrails at the airport? Hearing none. Ordinance 1171-2024 stands approved. Please sign. Ordinance 1172-2024 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the director of port control to enter into various written standard and requirement contracts for the purchase, lease, or lease with options to purchase of various on-road vehicles, apparatus, and off-road equipment, cabs, bodies, and accessories, equipment, and other aftermarket items necessary to equip the vehicles authorized for their intended purposes, including vehicle rehabilitation, training, and inspections as needed for the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year with 1 year option to renew, exercisable by the director. You know, sometimes it seems like the law department's paid by the word in these ordinances. Director 1172, tell us about vehicles.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Committee. Once again, I am asking Christine Gilmartin, my Assistant Director of Finance, to present this item today. Thank you.
Through the chair, we are just seeking permission to enter this agreement so that we have the ability as needed, a contract to get equipment, vehicles on our own when needed, replacement vehicles. We also are in the, which will be in our slide later, getting rid of outdated vehicles that need to be no longer have a useful life. So we would like to have this for whatever vehicles we need. We have the contract available.
Give us some examples of what those vehicles are.
It could be equipment, and it could be a pickup truck. It could be, I know that they specifically asked for the K-9 patrol vehicle that they use for the K-9 that does in the morning with the passengers.
Is it like drug sweeps, the K-9?
Well, chemical. I think it's more chemical than
Chemicals,
drugs.
okay.
Bombs,
Yeah, bad
and
things,
such.
yeah.
But any vehicle we use, it could be central receiving. They need a new, we need a new van because it's very outdated and rusty. So these are the vehicles that we use on airport, like the pickup trucks and equipment that are on airport that go on the airfield and such.
Okay. All right. Allowing the airport to buy or lease vehicles. Do I have any questions on 1172? Hearing none, 1172, 2024 stands approved. Please sign. Okay. Director, ordinance number 1202, 2024 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to employ one or more professional consultants to conduct an economic impact study of Cleveland Hopkins International Airport.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So an economic impact study is a tool that's frequently used by airport operators, planners, and regulatory agencies to measure the economic value that an airport contributes to its local and regional surroundings. And it's become one of the standard airport planning documents, similar to the airport master plan and other studies that airports use for operations and planning purposes. So Port Control is requesting approval to enter into one or more professional services contracts to conduct an economic impact study of CLE. It has been 10 or more years since the last study was conducted. Typically, they should be done every 5 to 7 years or so in order to reassess the impact of the airport's activities on the local community. The last study revealed an impact greater than $5 billion. I expect a new study would have been commissioned around 2020. I think we also know why that did not happen.
Yeah.
And so
Why would happen?
I have no idea. I thought you might know. Now that the airport has recovered from the deep impacts of the pandemic, the time is prime to proceed with a new study. With the jobs added in recent years at the airport and salaries increasing nationwide over the last several years, along with visitor spending considerations, which we believe are also growing, it's expected that the impact will be greater than the last study. We'd like to begin this effort within the upcoming budget year, and it's likely to take several months to complete once underway. We ask for your approval today.
Thank you, Director. And does this interface at all with TMDP in any way? Does it inform it? Does it?
Not directly, but it is certainly a tool that can be used to show the importance, the significance, the reason for the airport being in the community and what it contributes as a result of the activity that happens there. So it can complement, I would say, as far as our plans for the future surrounding the TMDP.
And do you ever see, Director, in your experience, do these ever also spur other economic activity around the airport? Meaning, is there data that comes out and someone says, "Hey, that's great. We want to open a business there," or whatever?
I don't know if I would say that, but what I would say is that it's important to update these studies every few years, especially if you know that good things are happening on and around the airport, because it would be expected that the results would reveal an increased significance of the economic impact to the local area. So that's what I would say, is to have a continuing recurring effort, and we intend to get back on track with that every 5 to 7 year effort with this economic impact study.
All right. What questions do I have about an economic impact study for Cleveland Hopkins International Airport? Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the Director, when was the last time this economic impact study was done for the airport?
It was approximately 10 years ago, through the chair, to the councilman. Yes, about 10 years ago, sir.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, how come this wasn't done prior to the master plan? I mean, wouldn't you think that would have an influence on the master? I'm just curious and just wondering.
Through the chair to the councilperson, they're not directly related. I think they can complement one another. The master plan really is just looking at how airport property can be utilized over a 20-year period, sort of a blueprint. And the economic impact study really is saying, based on what is at the airport today, this is the value of that asset to the community that it serves. So they're not really apples to apples. They can complement one another. The reason that I would say this study didn't happen a few years ago is primarily because of the pandemic. And once that period hit, everything would have nosedived in terms of impact. So now's the right time for us to proceed.
And this study, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, it will be on the current airport, right? Not the economic impact on once the master plan is complete.
That's correct. And in fact, I would offer that we would likely do another one around 2030, around the time of getting close to completing those improvements, because we will likely have grown in other areas as well. If we have land, for instance, that is undeveloped currently, but has been developed in 5 years' time, and there are several hundred jobs that have been added as a result, those types of reasons would be factors to consider doing an update.
All right, and then my last question, Mr. Chairman, to the director, $500,000, is that the going rate for an economic impact study for a city?
So it varies, but I mean, I have sort of queried my fellow airport directors around the country just to get a sense to make sure that we budgeted appropriately, and it seems that that's somewhat in the range of what is safe for us to budget for this effort.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Councilman Casey. And would one example of that be what we just heard? The hotels and restaurants being built. Would that be an example of if an economic impact was done today versus when those were built, those would add to, I would imagine?
Absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. And an example, Cincinnati, it's a very large center for air cargo, which Cleveland is not. But every few years, Cincinnati does an update to its economic impact study. It grew from somewhere around a similar level to Cleveland's last effort, around $5 billion, to like $9 billion. But again, they knew for sure that number was going to be significantly higher because they had a lot more activity on the airport, a lot more jobs, and so forth. So it's something that we should be doing on a recurring basis, and I'm excited to get this underway and see what it reveals.
And does this only take into consideration airport-owned or previously owned land? Or, for example, when Councilman Slife gets that huge piece of land for the airport redeveloped into hundreds of jobs, would it take that in as well?
I don't think in terms of like a land sale or something like that, it is really rooted in jobs, in taxes,
that are kind of
salaries.
indirect. Can it be indirectly tied?
Direct, indirect, induced.
Induced. Okay,
yes.
That's good to know.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions on 1202? Hearing none. 1202-2024 stands approved. Please sign. I think that's all I got legislatively for you, Director, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Alrighty, so thank you all again for hanging with us in the legislative session. We are now, do I need to close it and reopen it? All right, yep, all right. So I'm going to close the Transportation Mobility Committee of Cleveland City Council. We're going to dismiss it. All right. I'm now going to call to order a committee of the whole of this Cleveland City Council in order to discuss the port control operational review prior to the 2025 budgeting cycle. This is for the viewing public, part of the ongoing sessions here at Cleveland City Council to split, which I think is a more efficient and helpful, informative approach, the operational components of departments versus the financial budgeting components of departments. These prior to next year are to inform members of council and the general public about the operations of each department in the city of Cleveland. Today, we have the director of the Department of Port Control and his team that will discuss the overview of their operations. So with that, we will call this committee of the whole to order. I do not believe I need to call roll because there's no active legislation. So Director, why don't you kick us off with your port control presentation? And I believe this is all on everyone's tablets as well. Madam Clerk, I don't need to call roll, correct? Or do I? I don't. Okay, thank you. The presentations are on your tablets. What I would ask is you please write down any questions that you have, unless you got something really burning you need to ask on a slide. If we can hold questions to the end of the director's slideshow, in which he'll be here to answer any of those questions, unless you got something that you really feel you need to jump in at. So with that, Director, take us away.
Good morning once again, and we appreciate you being here today for the purposes of our overview of the operations of the Department of Port Control. So I just thought I'd take a few minutes to sort of reflect on year one of my time here and step into the presentation from there. So I joined the city as Director of Port Control about 18 months ago, and it's proven to be a challenging and demanding environment, as I think many would expect in a large new role like this. I stepped into the role at the end of the rapid post-COVID rebound of our primary asset, which is, of course, Cleveland Hopkins. And The month of my arrival coincided with the reestablishment of Cleveland's direct link with Europe, as there was a state, regional, and local partnership that brought about the resumption of European service provided this time by Aer Lingus with nonstop service 4 times per week to Dublin, Ireland. So that was a huge deal. Months into my onboarding and after a strong and successful effort with key local business partners, Frontier Airlines announced its intention to create a focus city at CLE, and that brought with it over 400 jobs and 7 aircraft to be based here, with promises to expand both flights and nonstop markets for the benefit of a vibrant local travel market. That focus city operation was officially launched last spring and continues to develop. The Department of Port Control consists of North Coast Harbor, Burke Lakefront, and Cleveland Hopkins. When I arrived, the fate of Burke Lakefront Airport was undecided and being studied, and the future infrastructure needs of Cleveland Hopkins was being discussed with its most important business partners, those being the signatory airlines. Staffing levels were insufficient, and even with a concerted effort to improve, that reality remains so. We have important work to do in this area, among others. The first year was largely spent gaining an understanding of my new environment, its primary stakeholders, its people, how it functions as a city department, observing, asking questions, taking mental notes in order to make decisions about how to position us for success going forward. That year was also spent putting Cleveland back on the map within the industry, as it was largely forgotten. Having not been at the table within the industry's most significant associations, such as the Airport Minority Advisory Council, the American Association of Airport Executives, Airports Council International North America, and others, nor was it consistently in the room for some of the industry's primary business development events. I'm proud to, along with members of my team, be representing Cleveland in a way that is necessary, as we have much to enlighten the industry on. We have a good story to tell, essentially. One effort worth mentioning was Assistant Director Go Martin and I visited Frontier Airlines headquarters early last fall to discuss its presence here at CLE. That was while they were considering the future here. Also visited several of our airlines at their respective headquarters, along with a member of my staff who focuses on air service development, to discuss operational performance and new opportunities for expansion of routes, frequency, aircraft size, et cetera. After all, as much as many in this room may love Cleveland, certainly do love Cleveland, it is not top of mind in our industry, and it takes work to not only change that reality, but to keep our visibility elevated permanently. We need to act bigger and bolder in an effort to be better and rise above. There's tremendous buzz around our plans for the future to modernize and expand our infrastructure, and also reason for companies across the industry spectrum to be excited about the opportunity to do business here. It's our job to boost CLE, and I'm proud to do so personally, as well as support certain efforts for my team to do the same. Last spring, I was unexpectedly faced with a major shift in support within my senior management team, as one member abruptly retired and another resigned to take a position elsewhere. This required the remaining members of my senior team, to my left and right, to temporarily assume additional responsibilities while I finalized the new organizational structure and sought to fill those roles. I'd like to thank Dennis Kramer, my Assistant Director of Development, and Christine Gilmartin, my Assistant Director of Finance, for their willingness to band together and combine our energy to maintain the operation. I'd also like to thank several members of the team who were asked to do the same on an interim basis at the next level down within our infrastructure, the assistant commissioners. Also, Lana Al-Nazar, a key member of my HR team, is in the room today. She's to be commended for the heavy lift that she has somehow managed to carry over the last several months, as well as others on the team who really have stepped up and done an amazing job to continue to do the work that's required within this department. I'd like to express my appreciation and gratitude for the members of the Port Control team, as I'm aware there are not enough of us at the moment, but I'm committed to making the effort that will bring more support across all levels of the operation to help propel us forward. As we build on the existing workforce, it's important that we continue making efforts within the confines of the city's process via civil service to produce a workforce which is not only talented, capable, and competent, but also diverse. When I speak on diversity, I'm referring to the full spectrum of the definition. That said, I'm fully supportive of creating a workforce that is representative of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, the region that our economic assets serve. I'd love to see more women, people of color, other minorities, marginalized or non-traditional groups represented within my team. Through my involvement with the Airport Minority Advisory Council and the work with the Airport Leadership Collective, we are well aware of the fact that minorities are generally not well represented at supervisory and higher levels in airports. It's improved since I began my career over 28 years ago, but there is still much work to do. Admittedly, much of that work will have greater impact, I believe, in the longer term versus near term, because I think the real opportunity is with the youth, turning them on to all that the business of airports has to offer. But in the meantime, it's important to recognize members of the existing team showing great promise and ability, encouraging them to take on roles of increasing responsibility, and to educate those outside of and unfamiliar with the opportunities in this industry. In an effort to prepare to welcome a more diverse workforce, it's important that we place an emphasis on providing beneficial training for the existing team. The city has created an ever-expanding library of internal training resources, and when combined with third-party support, Port Control is placing a greater emphasis on helping our team to broaden its horizons and become better prepared for leadership roles, or to arm existing leadership with more of the tools needed for success, along with job-specific training, for instance, within our custodial team. We're also forging a closer relationship with our unions and have recently begun what will become regular meetings to strategize around working better together to create a more positive work environment, a place that people seek to become a part of and stay because they believe in what we are striving to achieve. There's a concerted effort to improve communication both between management and the unions as well as internally within divisions. We believe this will also foster an improved work environment by the sharing of information across all levels of the organization. We're placing a greater emphasis on addressing challenges within our existing team. With the support of city HR and law, we are improving how we manage those not adhering to the city's work rules or other requirements expected of city employees. That is also a necessary effort to demonstrate to those members as well as others that we take job performance and work conduct seriously. Additionally, there's a third-party investigation underway with a focus on working conditions and employee complaints spanning several years, long before my arrival. While this is a city law-led effort, I was fully supportive of it happening when I was initially consulted, as I want us to take as many steps as possible to improve working conditions, morale, and employee pride. If we are to increase employee retention and also be an attractive place to work for those outside of Port Control, we must take the investigation seriously and evaluate and implement actions accordingly. We've been working with City HR and Civil Service on an initiative to modernize both classifications and descriptions across Port Control, as well as to strengthen many of the corresponding salary bands. I will soon share those plans with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Transportation Mobility Committee prior to advancing on what will be a multi-phase effort early in the new year. We must be more competitive within the airport industry if we expect to retain existing and attract top talent. External talent with airport experience look at salary and benefits as a primary determining factor of initial interest. In many instances, we do not compare well to other airports, including some which are smaller. So we lose candidates at step one, meaning they don't even apply. Or they are offered a position and we cannot come to an agreement due to limitations on salary or other components in lieu of salary. Simply put, we must do better if we are to develop the quantity and quality of a team required to successfully execute on what is a growing business with a forecast of more activity in the future. And while I am here, I will work with the city and council to make that a reality. I'd like to thank the City Council for its support of the mid-year HR request to increase the salary bands for 2 senior-level classifications, those of Assistant Director and Chief of Staff. While still below industry standard, it better positions us to be more attractive and worth consideration by those at other airports. I aim to be able to introduce, as I mentioned earlier today, several additions to the team in first quarter 2025. At the beginning of my intro, I mentioned that this role has been extremely challenging and demanding, and that is very true. However, it has also been incredibly rewarding. I'm proud to be here today representing Port Control and the City of Cleveland. I greatly appreciate all of the support I've received since stepping into the role 18 months ago, both internally and externally. I strongly believe that our future is incredibly bright. It won't come overnight or be an easy path, but it is possible and doable with lots of positive energy guiding us. Our success, largely to be experienced at Cleveland Hopkins, will contribute more greatly to the economic health of not only the city of Cleveland, but all of Northeast Ohio. I was attracted to this opportunity both by Cleveland's ongoing urban renaissance, as well as the role a transformed and modernized Cleveland Hopkins will play in shaping the future of this region. It is a major asset, an economic engine, and it will strengthen further going forward with all of our support. Today, we will walk you through highlights of the current year for Burke Hopkins, and Harbors, the three components of port control. I ask you give us a bit of grace today, not a pass, but just a bit of grace, as Christine, Dennis, and I may not have immediate answers to all of your questions. As mentioned earlier, we are 3 of a senior management team that should and will soon be twice that size. But we are happy to join you at the table to speak to what's going on at the Department of Port Control. Lana, as I mentioned, is also in the room to offer support for some of the HR-related questions if necessary. There's much that is going well, yet some aspects of our operation need improvement or greater emphasis. Our success in hiring to fill vacancies will certainly contribute to our ability to consistently deliver at a higher level. As you know, our customer-facing facilities at Hopkins are aging. They're lacking in capacity. They require additional attention due to increased activity. The latter is a great problem to have, but it can be challenging to manage on multiple fronts. I'm happy to report that several of our airline partners have improved their respective leased gate areas with new carpeting or seating, or both, as well as other enhancements, and those have happened in this calendar year. Port Control is also investing in common area facilities that will cover those, and we will cover those in today's presentation. Collectively, we're aiming to heighten the experience for those visiting our existing house, while simultaneously planning for an experience far beyond through new, improved, and expanded facilities to debut over the next several years, currently referred to as the Terminal Modernization Development Program. And with that, we will get into today's presentation. The presentation is meant to offer highlights within each division within Port Control, just a selection of 2024 accomplishments, achievements, and then what we are focused on in 2025. So that's the way we will approach this presentation today, and I again appreciate your time and attention in being here. So for our mission, vision, and values, you see those circles intersect. That's because they must. The mission, you see the 3 here, the mission, the vision, the values. Really, at the core, the airport is really charged with operating a safe environment for all. And that is the utmost of importance in what we are here for. But as mentioned earlier today, we are an economic engine. We are a center for the movement of goods and people, and a major employer for the area. So those are also areas for us to consider. Here are our priorities. It revolves around our customers. Customers can be internal as well as external. Our employees, so the members of our team who help us execute day in and day out. Being financially healthy and having operational excellence. Financial health is very important to, again, those most important business partners, our signatory airlines. The future state, so we're planning now for the future and at what our needs are going to be to meet a growing air travel market in Northeast Ohio. And then our stakeholders, of which there are many, both in the area as well as businesses that we have partnerships with, including the airlines at Cleveland Hopkins. So we will talk about staffing levels and vacancies first. What I wanted to do is show you a organizational representation of the senior level of Port Control. And I want to point out that 2 of these positions are currently filled by Dennis and Christine. Dennis with the area of development, Christine with finance. And then there are the 4 other positions, of which one is the chief of staff. I want to point out that while it shows as if the chief of staff, perhaps the 5 report to the chief of staff, that is not the case. The chief of staff is intended to be sort of my backup when I'm not around, for instance, but all 6 of those positions will be reporting up to me. And those are generally the areas in bulleted form within each of those positions that they will focus on day to day. So I'm very excited about having a plan for the future, but we have a lot further to go. We need to get this in place first, frankly, so that we can then plan how the rest of the organization should look going forward. So this is a look at our diversity. It is still a male-dominated workforce, 3-to-1 as of mid-October of this year. And then you see the breakdown below that, 36% Black or African American, 55% white, and so on. So that is the current landscape, if you will, of our workforce. These are the vacancies within the department. I spoke about the assistant director positions, and then we have vacancies really across the organization. Many are just one or two here or there, but there are some areas where there are more vacancies. I did want to point out specifically within our custodial team, I spoke on this a few months ago, but we have taken a concerted effort to increase our staffing levels within the custodial group because, frankly, with higher levels of activity in the terminal facility, it requires more attention. We have been challenged across my 18 months here to get up to full staffing levels, but I want to thank civil service as well as city HR and my HR team for working together and improving that situation. We're doing quite well in that area today. It's still somewhat of a revolving door. I think it always will be. That's just sort of the nature of the business. But we are doing better today than we have been in the entire time that I've been on board. And I'm looking forward to us continuing to further improve in that area in terms of looking after the condition of our facilities for our customers. So I'll speak briefly on Burke Lakefront and some of the accomplishments that have been realized in the current year, and then just some of the focus that is planned for the upcoming year. So things are looking really good at Burke these days, actually. I thank our interim manager, Joel Woods, for his efforts there, as well as the team that looks after Burke on a day-to-day basis. We also are a little bit more integrated in how we support Burke than I think has been the case in years past. And so that, I believe, is an improvement. It's a step forward, and it's something that has been recognized by the Burke team, and I think appreciated by all of us, frankly. So very pleased with how we are working better together, because we are one system ultimately, and one team. Air service development. So that photo is a picture of the head of Frontier Airlines, and obviously Honorable Mayor Bibb and myself back on Valentine's Day, actually, of this year. That was the day that Frontier announced the route network that it would operate as part of the initiation of its Focus City operation, and that was implemented back in the spring. So that's a list of the markets on the left that Frontier added. Some of those have become seasonal, where they flew for the summer. They've been suspended. Some of them are coming back. I think that Frontier will continue to evaluate the operation of the Focus City here, but they are extending schedules into the spring of next year, and things are looking pretty good in terms of the overall capacity they intend to operate at CLE. Also very excited to have Delta bringing Salt Lake City service back. In fact, that may have come back over the weekend, or this coming weekend, that service resumes, and that's sooner than they were telling us initially, because we'd sort of been beating on the door of Delta to get that service back in place, because it opens up connections to many more markets west that you cannot access through the other Delta hubs that are served from Cleveland. So very excited about that. United did also add service to Las Vegas and Phoenix this year, and then Sun Country added service to its base at Minneapolis, St. Paul. So quite a few service additions and seats that were added in the early part of 2024. That's a depiction of our route map on the screen, just showing you all of the nonstop markets. The ones those are in green. The ones that are shown in red are unserved markets. So those are markets that we are looking to establish or reestablish nonstop service. And one of those just says regional markets. So those are sort of close-in markets that we likely had back in the hub days, that we think there is opportunity in certain instances to engage carriers with the idea of bringing service to some of those markets back for the benefit of our local market, as well as those who live at the other end of some of those routes. Also, there are markets that we consider underserved. So that means they have nonstop service today, but we think the demand is greater than what the current service is meeting. And those are listed for you. San Francisco, New York LaGuardia, that was one Frontier market. Frontier, as you likely know, typically does day-of-week service, but they actually came in with daily service to New York LaGuardia because I think they understood that if you're going to serve New York, you need to serve it every day. So that certainly has helped in terms of providing additional lift between Cleveland and LaGuardia specifically. Washington, Reagan National is another one of those markets, and Toronto. I would like to mention that currently we don't have service to Toronto. Air Canada Jazz suspended service for the winter. They suspended service to about a half dozen transporter markets from Toronto, and they are returning on May 1st. It's already in the schedules for sale, so we're looking forward to the resumption of that service in spring. This is a quick look at 3 years of overall passenger activity. So total passengers arriving and departing. 2019, we've talked about the 10 million passenger mark. So that was a high water mark, post-hub, highest level of passenger traffic that had been reached in a number of years at CLE, then the pandemic in 2020. So by 2023, though, as you see, we were nearly fully recovered at just under 9.9 million total passengers. And for 2024, we're still projecting approximately 10,250,000 total passengers for the year. We're at about 8.6 million today with 2 months to go. So we think we're in a good position to meet that forecast. However, what has happened also across the year, we had great seat growth in Q1 and Q2. We were about flat in Q3. This is compared to the same quarter last year. In the fourth quarter, however, our seat capacity is down. That is largely due to a reduction in service by Spirit Airlines. That really began a year ago, so it didn't just happen, but that's why it's sort of showing up now in the fourth quarter of 2024. So we have fewer seats available in the market for this quarter than we've seen across the previous 3 quarters of this year, and that makes it a little more difficult to see gains in passenger traffic, which we are not really expecting to see for the fourth quarter. We'll see if we can sort of come out even, but even that may be a bit of a challenge. But we still believe, even with that reduction in seats, that we should still meet the $10,250,000 passenger mark for the year. This is showing you the passenger activity by month, comparing 2023 versus 2024, 23 in orange, 24 in blue. And you'll see the first 8 months we were up. In September, we basically were flat. In October, we were down. And that, again, is not a big surprise because our seat capacity is also down. However, our load factor was actually up to 80% from 77% last year. So it does at least show that there remains good demand for air travel in the market. And we're happy to see that. So at this point, I will turn things over to Assistant Director Bill Martin to go through the finance section of our presentation today. Thank you.
Assistant Director, take us away.
All right, thank you. So, are you going to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I do have the clicker.
So, I'm just going to briefly touch on a few slides for finance. This slide represents the 2024 versus the 2025 budget, over budget. The mayor's estimate that you guys get every year at the budget hearings, that shows budget for the current year, but actuals for the prior years. So this is budget over budget. And I also, the left side of the screen is showing you the breakout CLE. And on the right side of that half is Burke. Every year at our council hearings, I am asked for the breakout. The way it is presented in the mayor's estimate does do a roll-up. So I broke it down on this slide. And the total is a combination of the two. Our proposed budget for 2025 is $191,259,000. The right side is showing you the breakout of the revenue. Again, we follow the standardized format of the mayor's estimate. This slide is breaking it out in the mayor's estimate. It shows you only charges for services for all our revenue, and I think it also breaks out grant revenue. So this is showing you 24 over 25, the budgeted revenues for the airport system. The next slide, I just wanted to focus on a couple of our achievements in 2024, as well as our planned projects in 2025. In 2024, we issued short-term debt for the enabling projects for the Terminal Modernization Development Program. That was $175 million. We did a line of credit because we wanted to get those projects going versus issuing bonds. It was a much quicker to market. You don't have to do all the feasibility studies and things that are involved in issuing bonds. That way we get these projects, designing, planning, do a deeper dive. That was accomplished earlier this year. The other item that we changed is our reconciliation process for with our airlines. At the end of each year, we do what we call a true-up, and we take all the revenues and all the expenses for the whole year. And if we collected more than we needed to meet our bills, we pay back. And if we collected too little, I send them a bill. This is an important process because it's every dime that goes through the airport. It's done on an accrual basis after we have audited financial statements. And Rashawn Caldwell took the lead on that in streamlining that process for more accuracy. So we're very proud of that. And then some of our planned projects for 2025 include we will complete an airline use and lease agreement with our signatory airlines as our current agreement expires at the end of 2025. So we will be finalizing that. And we expect to be issuing long-term debt for the next phase of our TMDP. I'm also going to walk us through the lease and concession quickly, as I'm also over that area currently. I'm just going to highlight a few of the accomplishments we had. The lease group is really responsible for more than you would think. It's all the leases within the airport and on the campus. So not only are they always entering new leases, trying to get the pricing, getting the appraisal. When the tenant has an issue with the lease, this is the first place where they reach out to. And then this group coordinates back with building department, make sure it's our responsibility. So this is a very active group, and since I've had the privilege to be over it, I have a greater appreciation for this group and how dependent finance is on for the billings of our leases. Some of the things they achieved this year, they directed and they executed the Frontier Airlines space expansion, operation, and documentation. The addition equated to approximately 9,000 square feet of new crew, maintenance, and ticket counter and office space. So this was a huge accomplishment. To Councilman Slive's question, they do keep an ongoing, earlier today, we do keep by concourse all the available spaces, as well as kind of a roadmap of who's in all the spaces, both on the level you see, as well as what we call ramp level, which is ground level. We also achieved, the lease group is over our Fraport lease, which is our concession program, record achievement on sales per plane passenger for all retail and food and beverage, year-end Q3 2024 of 1320 versus Q3 2023 1289. We obviously want to see that number bigger. That means people are spending more money while in the airport, which is not only helping the people who own the concepts within the airport, but the airport itself. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Director Kramer for Public Safety.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. So I'll touch on a few sections that we have as it relates to our public safety operations at the airport. Airport security is one section there. This group has a very large responsibility in coordinating with law enforcement, coordinating with TSA, coordinating with Border Patrol, and just having general security responsibilities over the airport. And so they, in our annual inspection this year, this group had no major security concerns noted by the TSA. A large program that was implemented this year was the airport worker screening. So this was a federal mandate by the TSA to take over and have a greater role in airport worker screening. So this team successfully implemented that program wherein we have an increased presence in screening airport employees to make sure we're maintaining a safe and secure facility. We did some good work in bringing about some new training that's part of the badging process now as it relates to active shooter and emergency evacuation. That's now a mandatory training sessions that are part of, everyone has to be rebadged every year, and so that now takes place. A lot of security upgrades in terms of cameras and other things. A major initiative for 25 is we're bringing on a new badging system for the airport, along with a lot of other increases in infrastructure to increase our security posture. It's an ongoing effort. Our airport ARF unit, for those who didn't know, we have our own fire unit out at the airport, and so this group also a very busy group. In 2024, a lot of the accomplishments that they achieved was really bringing on some new equipment and replacing some old equipment that was beyond its useful life. And training is a big thing for this group as well. Ongoing training. We had a lot of advancements and a lot of certifications for some of our ARF paramedics that they gained new certifications and were successful in advancing their careers. Coming up in 25, just more continuing on with replacing certain pieces of equipment that is starting to get pretty old and outdated, and just a continued effort on training and a focus on our employees themselves. So airport safety management systems, if you're not familiar with that term, it's a term that's been around in the aviation industry for quite a long time. The airlines have had a requirement to have a safety management system program for a very long time, but last year, I believe it was, the FAA implemented some new guidelines and some new policies that required airports to implement a new safety management system. And so we have a small team, but they're a strong team that developed our new airport safety management systems. This team did an extremely good job in developing this plan, this program, and as a result of those efforts, submitted our plan early to the FAA, and they've represented, that team's now represented us at a few conferences. They were invited by the FAA to speak on the development of our program because they did such a successful job in creating that program and starting the implementation of the program. So very pleased with that team in creating this new safety management systems program. And I will turn it back to Ms. Gilmartin.
Thank you. The next three areas I'm going to walk us through are current operational areas that I am overseeing, which I have enjoyed very much. I just want to say that because I'm sure that position is going to be filled. But typically the CFO does not oversee the operational areas. And I just want to say to the team, if any of them are watching, they have taught me a lot of things. I have such a greater appreciation for the costs that are involved in these areas, our airfield and such. And, you know, before I had this experience, I see big numbers, I start to get sweaty, I start to get nervous. So this is...
You're learning a lot.
I'm learning a lot. And now I have a true appreciation of where those dollars are going.
Yeah.
And I make a point of letting them know that.
I was like,
So I'm going to walk us
field
quickly through because I really think they're managing me and they're doing a great job. So field maintenance. Oh, I went backwards, yeah. Thank you. So field maintenance is basically responsible for the airfield, both snow removal, the pavement repairs. In the summertime, they mow some of the lawns around the airport. So this is a very hands-on tactical team. They're driving on the airfield. Some of their 2024 accomplishments was, which I brought up earlier today, the Brook Park Road guardrail installation to reinforce the airport's perimeter fence. This was a big accomplishment. We had started off doing half of it from funding purposes, and then we were able to find some available funds through the mid-year. We were able to accomplish that, which is a huge win for the airport. They also began upgrade to the airport's field maintenance facility, including the addition of all new LED lighting. So these are big accomplishments for this team. And one of their 2025 plan projects is to complete training for field maintenance specialists to obtain ground vehicle operation certificates. They currently have their CDL licenses, but this is a test they can take out at the airport. Airport operations. When people say call operations, every one of our badges have this number. They get all the calls from anything basically going on in the airport, as well as overseeing the airfield. In 2024, they accomplished airport-wide airfield lighting detection and warning system, which was approved by this group here, and a successful Part 139 annual safety inspection, which is our safety inspection through the FAA, which is a huge accomplishment. They come out and do the annual inspection. Their biggest goal for 2025 is to continue to have 0 findings in the annual inspection by the FAA. That speaks volumes for our airport and its safety. The last area I'm going to talk about today is vehicle maintenance. The vehicle maintenance group of the airport, I had earlier brought them up during one of the pieces that we passed today for their contract to purchase cars and vehicles. They're responsible for all the maintenance at the airport. And that includes not only the vehicles that we use, but it includes the equipment you see out on the airfield. So it's a rather large job. So one of their accomplishments for 2024 was they prioritized the fleet safety by removing approximately 30 pieces of obsolete vehicles and equipment. So the contract that you approved earlier, so we can obtain new equipment and more modern vehicles for the people who use it for the safety on the airfield. And their 2025 plan project is to develop a process for and complete all the disposal of all outdated and obsolete equipment. It may not sound like a big job, but it is, and that does include both airports. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dennis.
There we go. Next group we're going to talk about is our terminal operations team. This is the team that you see if you come for a flight, early in the morning or really any time. They're out there kind of helping direct traffic. They're customer service agents. They're the ones really in the trenches out there every day, helping make sure we maintain a smooth operation. So this group, a very high demand on this group. We've added some team members to this group this year, and we're looking to continue to increase the size of this team. As we know, our ticket lobbies in certain areas of the airport get pretty crowded, pretty congested, and so this team has a really important job to help everything flow as it should. Next section is building maintenance. This, again, we have a facility in our terminal that's over 1 million square feet. There's a lot of real estate, a lot of facility that needs to be maintained on a regular basis, and a lot of those facilities are very old, very aged, they're close, beyond or close to the end of their useful life. So this team has a really tough job in maintaining such an aged facility. But they do a great job. This year they did a lot of replacements, some 55-year-old boiler isolation valves. They've been, over the last several years, we've replaced a lot of HVAC equipment to keep things moving. Director Francis touched on a little bit some aesthetic things that we've done in the terminals, and this team really kind of takes the lead on that, and they've done some replacements of carpets and tile areas throughout the facilities. And then we have a strong electrical team who's done a lot of lighting replacements and LED lighting upgrades, things to that nature. Coming up in 25, this group will continue a lot of just replacement and maintenance work, and we have a project on a building coming up that we're looking to. It was a building that previously was occupied by United Airlines, but we're taking it over for certain airport functions, and that team's going to take the lead on demolition and renovation of that building. Next section is our custodial maintenance team. Again, this is Director Francis touched on it a little bit. This is a team, a large team that we try to maintain, but it is difficult from a vacancy perspective. But we're continuously trying to build this team and continue having a strong presence in the airport. We've done a lot of different things in changing schedules and looking at how we attack different ways to clean the facility. This team's done a very good job in adapting to that, and they've done a handful of things at looking at new technologies, looking at different hand soaps and sealers and hand dispenser, paper towel dispensers, all those things to try to provide the best customer service possible. A lot of that will continue on into 2025, and as Director mentioned, we're going to have a very strong focus on a training program for this group to continue to make sure that we have a staff that is up to par and will deliver a very clean facility for our passengers.
So before we go to the next section, I just wanted to make mention of the fact that some of our positions, many of our positions are filled by individuals that are not seen, right? They're not necessarily customer facing. The custodians are very much customer facing, and I think that often it's a thankless type of job for them. And in an environment like ours that can be very fast-paced, high demand, it's difficult to keep up, literally and figuratively, with the demands of the facility. So I wanted to thank you, this group, because you supported when we came to you a couple of months ago, I believe, to ask for support to have the ability to bring on a third-party provider to augment those services when needed. We're hopeful that we don't need to do that very often, given the progress that we're making in bringing up our staffing levels for our own team, our own custodian team. But I also wanted to mention that one thing that should have launched this week, I haven't heard or seen it yet, but I think it's out there. Over the summer, I recorded both an audio and a visual public service announcement. And it essentially is asking for the users of the airport to help us help them, to do their part in keeping CLE clean. And I think that's important. I'm hoping that that message is met in the spirit that it was intended, which is just to say, take a couple extra seconds to pick up after yourselves. Things that you purchase in the airport, thank you, but don't forget them when you walk away to board your flight, because there are trash receptacles just feet away from you. When you're in the restroom, take an extra second to wipe down the counter surface that may have gotten water on it because of your use. If more people do those things, not only does it make for a more presentable facility for everyone, it also helps our team to do more and to move around more efficiently across the facility. So I also hope that that expresses to that team that I see them and that I appreciate them, and I'm trying to do what I can to assist them in different ways. Also, when I walk throughout the facility on a routine basis, I call it out and about, I pick up trash as I go through. Because again, even if it's an area that's leased by an airline that ultimately we would not be responsible for cleaning, because at the end of the day, no one knows the difference from a customer perspective. It's just the airport. So that's something that is important to me, and I know members of my team do the same when we're out there. We wipe down countertops when we're in the restrooms, just seeing what condition they are in. So we're trying to help the members of our team, especially on the custodial staff, to make their jobs easier. And hopefully that is recognized. But even if it isn't, that's not the point. The point is it's what we should be doing to help each other to really perform as one team and to be seen as better, if you will, in the eyes of our customers. And we hope that they also help themselves in the process. I think otherwise, we can achieve greater things if everyone contributes to it. So I just wanted to make mention of that. So thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Director. Next group, information technology. I mean, as is, important. All of our sections of our airport operation are all very important, but IT is no different. Few quick highlights here. In 2024, a major accomplishment that you all supported is we procured a new common use passenger processing system, and what that does is, all of when the airlines need some additional space from their leased space, or we have an airline that's not necessarily signatory like Sun Country, they use what's called the common use facilities, and so we implemented a brand new common use passenger processing system for the airlines to use and to support their operation, and then so that was implemented in 2024. It's active and in use now. The other big thing, that's really, it's out there right now for airports, but it's out there really for everything, is cybersecurity. The team has a very strong focus on cybersecurity efforts to make sure we're doing what we need to do to keep our systems secure. Coming up in 25, a big push for this group will be, it's kind of an add-on to that common use passenger processing system, but it'll be our common use gate management system. So this will be, a more modern way to manage all of the different activity that happens at the different common use gates at the airport. So team will be taking on that project here shortly. And then again, I'll say cybersecurity will be another, very big push for this group this year. There's certain, mandates out there that we need to follow in terms from some of our federal partners for cybersecurity, and we're intending to, continue those efforts into the 25 year and ongoing forever. Real quick, Director mentioned we also oversee North Coast Harbor, and so, I have ground transportation in this group too. That's not necessarily really part of our strategy and harbors group, but I put it in here so keep number of slides down. So I'll briefly touch on ground transportation, but big accomplishment in 24 for ground transportation was we created an agreement with a peer-to-peer service, Turo, if anyone's familiar with that. So they're now operating under a proper agreement we have with them at the airport. And then we also implemented a parking reservation system. So if customers aren't familiar with that yet, you can go to Cleveland Airport website. You can get on there and you can actually reserve a parking spot in the garage. We're looking to potentially expand that into some of the other lots potentially in 25. We're still analyzing that, but there is an active reservation system available right now for in the parking garage for customers to utilize. And then looking again into 25 for ground transportation, we're as part of our TMDP, we're looking at what happens with the consolidated rental car facility. As we've mentioned in the past, we're looking to bring that operation back on site, and so this group is working to figure out the details of that, where it would best go, how it fits into the program, and different details of that. Touching then on North Coast Harbor and real estate and some of the higher impact projects that we have. This is really the group that looks at what we saw earlier in development with NASA Park and things like that. That's what this group handles in real estate development and things of that nature. North Coast Harbor had a fantastic year for revenue. And then if you hadn't noticed, over in the northwest corner of Voinovich Park, there's a new monument called the Lone Sailor Monument. You can see a picture of it there. A very, very beautiful new monument that's out there that I would encourage folks to check out. And then looking ahead to 25, we did start in 2024 a North Coast Harbor renovation improvements project, and that's really to replace lighting out there, replace landscaping, fix a lot of the pavers and things out there that have been damaged over the years. And so that project kicked off this year and will continue on into 2025 to improve all the operations down in North Coast Harbor. Airport development, this group includes our planning, grants, and asset management team. This is the group that's out there trying to find grants for us, trying to close old grants for us, do a lot of the planning for all these projects that we have coming up, and including parts of our TMDP. We have our compliance and inclusion section. This group's big accomplishment for this year was I believe 4 or 5, I lost track, but 4 or 5 outreach events in the community to get the word out there about everything that's happening at the airport and all the work that we have coming up on the Terminal Modernization Development Program. Our engineering construction team, always busy. They have a lot of different design projects going on right now. It's kind of a light construction year, but a lot of projects in the works and design. You can see them listed there. And then our environmental team, they do a lot of environmental compliance type stuff, but this year we kicked off our sustainability management plan, which will kind of get into our TMDP and continue to drive some of the things that we're going to do into our TMDP. 2025, this group, again, has a lot planned. Some of these projects that are being designed now and planned, they're going to move into construction here coming up. Our compliance and inclusion team, they're building some databases for some new requirements in terms of Title, I'm sorry, I'm going to probably get it wrong, Title 23, Part 23 for small business requirements that came out through the federal government. That's going to be a big topic for this team this year. Again, I mentioned a lot of those design projects are going to kind of, for the engineering construction team, turn into construction projects. One major project, we talked earlier about our efforts to maintain the existing fence that we have around the airport, but we have an upcoming FAA project. It's in design now, federal FAA grant-funded project to replace the entire perimeter fence of the airport, our wildlife fence project. So that will be, the design is going to complete in 25, and we're going to be looking to procure a contract for that here in the next few months. And then again, environmental team, continue that work on sustainability management plan and a lot of those, compliance type related work that they have ongoing and a handful of other projects that are coming up for them. All right, getting into Terminal Modernization Development Program. We've kind of touched on it a lot this morning, and I've probably presented some of these slides to you all in the past, but I'll show some of them again to just kind of refresh a bit. We completed our master plan back in 21, and what that plan told us was we have a lot of deficiencies in a lot of our facilities, and this slide really kind of highlights that. It speaks to the areas where we have some pretty major spatial deficiencies in our ticketing, our checked baggage system, our security screening checkpoints, and our gates and gate waiting areas. And so you can just see the numbers there, deficiencies. And so that prompts, hey, we need to do something. We need to either reconstruct or renovate our facilities here into the future. What we know we want to do is we want to add parking spaces on the land side. We know we need more parking. There's days our facilities are completely full and you can't find a spot. So we know we need to add parking. Our roadways need to be configured in a more efficient manner. We talked a little bit about our rental car facility. Instead of having to take a shuttle, we want to get that back on site so it's a walkable option for passengers. And then our head house, that previous screen spoke to that. And all these different operations that take place in that head house about needing to modernize and expand those different pieces of the operation. Airside, our gate hold rooms are too small. They need to be modernized. Sizes increased. We need more concessions. More restrooms are small. Director talked about that a little bit about how a large plane will come in and land, and then our custodians are there trying to clean, and our restrooms get overloaded and they're too small. They need to be expanded and they need to be modernized. We do have a project that we started in 24 to modernize some of those. It's not an expansion, but is our restroom renovation project that's been ongoing. I'll say we're probably about halfway through that now, and it's some of our most traveled bathrooms. What we decided to do was give those a bit of a renovation and make them a little easier for the custodians to clean and have a much more presentable appearance for the traveling public. And so that project's about halfway done now.
Dennis?
Yep, sir.
Do you know if that most recent set opened today?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's supposed to. It's supposed to, yes.
I surprised him with that. My apologies. So the point is that that process, that refresh of the restrooms is a little behind schedule. But we should have been opening the third set today, if not very, very soon. and we decided to hold off on moving to the next set, which will be at the end of Concourse C. This set is the first set in Concourse C. The middle set has already been completed. The food court has been completed. Now they'll move to the set in what we call the Banjo, the United Gates, essentially. We're going to hold off a week on starting that. Correct, sir. So we figured since we have this opportunity, this sort of natural break, take advantage of that and let us get through the high travel days of Thanksgiving, and then we'll come back in the first week of December and start on that set of restrooms. So,
Thank you. And then just the last little piece here is obviously we know we need to have some new and modernized customs facilities. All right, so I promise we're almost done, just a couple more. So what's been happening with our Terminal Modernization Development Program? I know I've mentioned this body in the past. We brought on Pasley Group about a year ago now, and so here's kind of the scope items that are part of their contract, and there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on with them over the course of the last year. They've taken a hard look at the forecast. They went back and took a hard look at all the things that were developed during master plan. They've looked at constructability and phasing and all these different things to help mold the plan. You know, master planning is really a very high level. What Pasley's done over the course of the last year has really gotten us more focused on more defining the program, if you will, in a program definition phase. We've had a lot of discussions with our airline partners. As mentioned, we're a fully residual airport, so our finances are the airline's finances, and so they're a very, very important stakeholder of ours. And so we've been doing a lot of work in getting alignment with them in what will all be included in the terminal program. If you've been to the airport recently, you noticed the old Sheridan Hotel is now down. It's been demolished. So we've started clearing some spaces now. And then there's a handful of enabling type projects that we have funding approved for by the airlines. It was the first tranche of funding. And so we've been doing scoping and looking to get those into the procurement pipeline here very soon. Again, I like always just to keep mentioning continued discussions with our airline partners because they are so important. We mentioned the first $175 million of the program was approved earlier in the year by the airlines, and here's what was included in that $175 million. And the big thing was, these enabling type projects. We're going to be doing some maintenance and storage type garage facilities. We're going to be doing a surface parking lot over by Concourse D, continuing demolitions. We're going to continue planning work and getting really into the meat and potatoes of the design work. I mentioned earlier, sustainability master plan's been kicked off. We've also kicked off an effort for our TMDP inclusion plan, and what this will be is, there's a lot of opportunity in our Terminal Modernization Development Program to really have a significant impact on the community in, hiring local firms and small businesses and minority businesses. And so what we've done now is kick off this effort to plan that out and determine how we are going to have inclusion in our Terminal Modernization Development Program because it is such an important part of the program. And then environmental NEPA work that a lot of things need to be done to make sure that we're doing everything from an environmental perspective that we need to do. So that work's underway now as well. What's coming up? Again, continued discussions with our airline partners, very important. We need to make sure that we are fully on board with them and they're fully on board with us. Here's some of those enabling projects I mentioned. Some of these have kicked off already. Some of these are coming out for procurement very soon. And we're going to kick that work off. I mentioned our compliance and inclusion team has done a number of outreach throughout 2024. We're going to continue that work and then continue this behind-the-scenes work that we have going on with Pasley and program definition and preliminary design. I will just quickly, briefly mention too, we have a lot of focus on our terminal program. It's very important, but we also have a lot going on out on the airfield too. I mentioned the wildlife fence replacement, and we're looking here in the next few years, working with our partners at the FAA and the ADO to do a reconstruction of our inboard runway, which will also be a major project to completely reconstruct one of our entire runways. And so I've been working towards that with the FAA and looking to do that project here in the next few years as well. So a lot going on out in the airfield as well. And with that is our last slide.
Thank you. Appreciate the team presenting that. Okay, I've got a couple questions, and then I'll open up to my colleagues. So let me just start, Director, on the TMDP. Everything that we saw in the presentation, thinking about the head house, thinking about ticketing, you broke those out, but I assume that is a comprehensive plan and design process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So those are elements, but
Correct.
we're not saying, well, we're only going to do this, and then 3 years later. I mean, and I understand it's phased, but we're going to design and think about it collectively. Is that correct?
So what we think about is sort of a full vision, and then breaking it down into components, land side and air side. I mean, we know that our biggest areas of being sort of short, if you will, in adequate space is in the head house on the land side. It's the roadways, it's the parking, it's the head house for ticketing and TSA screening. And so those are critical areas. And then on the air side, you're talking about hold rooms that are too small, restrooms that are too small. We need more concessions. So it's a holistic approach.
Okay.
But correct. Also, because of the fact that we can't simply construct on a greenfield somewhere else on the airport and move overnight from the existing house to the new house. We will have to approach this program, as you said, in a phased manner. And so it sort of will be like renovating and expanding our house while we are living in it.
Yep.
And so, yes, that's the way the program will be approached.
Thank you. And when are we looking at, thinking freshly off of our visit to Pittsburgh, they talked a lot about the design elements, both, architecturally, but also functionally. When will that work in earnest begin? Really thinking about design and flow.
So, I mean, that work has begun at a high level. And I would expect that in the first part of the year, in the first quarter or so, that we'll be able to share more about, again, from a high level, where we're going. What's interesting is Pittsburgh, they'll be opening their new facility by the end of next year, but that's a project that they've been talking about since around 2017, I believe it is. So it'll be about 8 years in the making from planning to being fully realized. So we're sort of on a similar path, but they had it a little bit better because they had space to work with in a different way than we do. But yes, that work high level has begun through Pasley and one of its subs.
So as that advances, please engage this committee
Absolutely.
on that. And the last thing I'll say on TMDP is please include average travelers in that work. And let me give you an example. I was recently in a major airport that has just been renovated. It was confusing as hell. I walked in the front door, didn't know what level I was supposed to be on. The signage was terrible. It was not. It looked like it was designed by aviation nerds. I say that lovingly, and not for an average passenger.
Sure.
And I've been through a lot of airports.
Right.
I walked in the front door, didn't know where I was, didn't know where I was supposed to go for ticketing. There was no clear signage. Even the signage was confusing. It was a disaster. So and it's a brand new facility.
Okay.
So let me just say,
Point
if we
taken.
could please, average people that have no background in aviation, let's have them as a part of this, so that, because I would imagine, most of our customers are not aviation experts, right? So that's just one piece of advice before we get into this, because I just
Sure.
had a really bad experience at a brand new facility.
And perhaps not seasoned travelers, not familiar with
Sure.
the airport.
Just coming
even
through
every once in a while, you don't necessarily
And
quote
don't-
everything to
and-
memory. Don't assume.
A lot of aviation language used in the
Okay.
signage that, again, to an aviation expert makes sense, but to just a person showing up to catch a flight did not really make sense. So that's
Signage.
just
Signage is incredibly important.
just a piece of
Absolutely.
advice.
Thank you.
I'll add to, we recently had a meeting with someone who is, I'll say, has a very strong knowledge of signage at airports. And they pointed to, both Christine and I and Director were in the meeting, and they pointed to us as like, none of the three of you are qualified to look at the signage in your facility
Yes.
because you know it too well.
Yes.
They said,
Yes.
you can't do this
We don't even
because
look at
you
the
know where
signs.
you're going.
Yeah.
You have to get
Bring in an
outside-
average
you
person off the
get an
street.
outside
Correct.
perspective to do
Yep.
it. You three are not qualified to do it. And I was like,
Yep,
that makes a lot of
100%.
sense.
Will happen.
I would get a diverse group of folks off the street that have nothing to do with airports and say, what is your opinion on this
Absolutely.
signage like
Agreed.
that? All right.
Totally agreed.
So moving on the staffing side, how can we support you? And this isn't just not the airport system, but there's a disconnect between, a conversation in Cleveland around folks that need employment or have low wages, and we've got thousands and thousands of open jobs. So how can we interface from council as well as other organizations in the community to get our folks opportunities at the airport, and then also to get you folks in seats, in whether it's custodial all the way up
Sure.
at the airport? How can we best support that activity?
So, Mr. Chair, I appreciate that comment and question, and thank you for the offer to support us there. We've been working with City HR, talking about ways that we can improve in how we advertise, where we advertise, because somewhat going to that point of diversity, there are certain communities that were just not well represented at the airport today. That it may be because they're not aware of the opportunities that exist there. So we want to do a better job in terms of the upfront effort in how we advertise opportunities. We certainly can forward those opportunities,
Yep.
to, especially if they're for groups, where a certain classification, but there are several positions that we need. If it's possible for you to push those out to some of your constituents within the
So, Director,
respective
all of
wards
us
the
have
city.
newsletters that hit almost every residential
Okay.
door in our neighborhoods.
Excellent.
I won't speak for other members, they control their news. I would love to have a box that says, hey, airport's hiring, go here to check it out, so that we can get our residents connected into opportunities. So that would be a request through our staff and through your staff. Just some simple, basic graphics that we can include both in ward-based communications, but council communications to help you bridge that gap.
Well, thank you, and certainly happy to collaborate in other areas as well that will help that cause.
Thank you. Okay, moving along here. Do we have data on where people are going? So when I walk in the door at Hopkins, do you know where my final destination is for all of your passengers?
Not you individually, but
I
we
know,
have the
from
data.
a-
Yes,
yeah.
we do have the data on where customers
Okay.
are going. There are services that we subscribe to where we can access that data,
Yep.
and also firms that develop forecasts for routes if we're going to meet with a carrier and we're going to propose
Yep.
a new market.
And do they look at that data too?
Yes.
I would imagine from a business perspective, they'd want to know where the demand is. So you
Absolutely.
can use that data to go to an airline and say, hey, I got all these people going to this location and
Correct.
we have no direct.
And you can also look at if there is no direct. This is an excellent example. You can see who's traveling in that market, but they're getting there via other
That's what I'm
cities.
saying,
If they're
right.
flying out of Cleveland,
Right.
they're getting there over hubs that have service. So a single connection per se.
Okay.
But yes, we do have access to that type of data that we use in our business development efforts with the airlines.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
And
sir.
Director, you touched on this somewhat, but can you speak a little bit more to the Spirit impact? So how nationally they've gone bankrupt, is that correct? Or
They filed
for
bankruptcy
bankruptcy?
beginning of the week. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
what impact does that have on Hopkins, and how, if at any, is that backfilled? What does that look like?
So for Cleveland, as I mentioned earlier, Spirit began to reduce its footprint about a year ago. They've been having some challenges. It's been widely publicized with the engine manufacturer for one of their fleet types. And so that's required some work based on number of cycles, some work that has to be done on those engines. And so that required them to reduce the fleet that was available for regular flying. that then required them to sort of shrink in terms of their overall footprint. They exited certain cities early in this year. I think Denver was one of those. And so they've done that, and they've also reduced service in other markets, including Cleveland. So at present, they're actually down to a very small number of routes. And for the winter, they're only going to be flying to Fort Lauderdale. So From Cleveland. And so the impact is minimal. For us, they do lease space. And we have the existing airline use and lease agreement in place for another year through the end of next year. You never know in bankruptcy proceedings if there will be efforts to challenge certain leases or whatnot, but that potentially is something to come. But from an impact from air service standpoint, because of those reductions that Spirit began making a year ago in Cleveland, it's put us in a different position with them than we would have been if we were here at the table 15 months ago.
Thank you. And so from a passenger perspective, are other airlines able to pick up their routes if the demand is there?
So airlines are generally not able to, they're not so nimble necessarily. But I have seen something happen where Spirit reduced service in Cleveland by eliminating certain routes, one of which was LA. And looks as though United is adding on an additional frequency to LA for at least a part of the upcoming year. That's likely in response to the reduction of service discontinuation.
So
of service
they already
by
have
Spirit.
service, but they're adding capacity in response.
Right,
for
they already have
example.
service, but they're adding frequency. So, so the airlines watch the moves of their competitors, but it's also important for us to do the same because we may see things in a different way or earlier on than the airlines might. And then that becomes a point of engagement to have conversation about what we see as possibilities, opportunities for enhancement of service.
So thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, next point two, and I'm wrapping here for the committee, baggage. I've had a couple situations at the airport where baggage has taken 30 to 40 minutes. Have we identified an issue there? I mean, just coming back recently, major carrier. I guess let me start by saying, is the baggage is handled by the carrier?
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
That's correct.
So what can the airport do when a carrier takes 40 minutes? People are sitting at the baggage carousel for 30 plus minutes. So recently there was like 300 people there, sitting there from 3 flights.
That could be part of the problem, honestly. Staffing.
But it was one carousel. The 3 flights were not.
Yep, understood. Right. So
Yeah,
what I'm
he just
saying
said-
is-
yeah, he
what I'm saying is, you're correct. That is not a service that the airport is responsible for. We don't have staff that provide baggage delivery for the airlines. That's either an airline function that they handle internally, or they have a third-party service provider.
Okay.
So what can happen, and I've received complaints similar to your experiences. What can happen is sometimes if staffing is not sufficient if it's staffed to handle normal operations, that is one thing. When things get a little off, that can actually have an adverse impact on time of baggage delivery to baggage claim, especially if there are aircraft that are turning and going out again, or if there was an influx of planes arriving within a very short period of time, and there may not be 3 crews, even though 3 planes came in.
Yep.
So sometimes the crew will go from one plane unload, go to the next plane unload, or unload from this plane because they've got to get the plane out again, and they'll load the bags for the outbound passengers before they bring the bags to baggage claim. So there are a number of variables there that are possible.
I would just note, I think it's important for the public to know that that is not the airport. However, as we noted with the garbage in the area,
They don't know.
They don't know.
Right.
And they blame the airport, right? Even though it's not the airport.
Yes.
So I would just, if we can have that conversation
Absolutely.
with our carriers, because it's really annoying, because the whole process goes really great
Until
we
the
were
end.
early in our flight, and it was wonderful, and then you sit at the carousel.
So we do.
Maybe
have regular-
if we include that in the airline's on time rate, they'll get it together.
that might make
They
a
seem to
difference.
really care about
So
that.
airlines actually for a while took it upon themselves to offer incentives to passengers if their bags weren't delivered to the baggage claim in a certain period of time after arrival. Most of them have retired those programs, but we do have regular meetings with our carriers, local staffing.
So I would just flag that.
We can,
and I can give you that
yes.
carrier offline.
Okay.
So that you're aware of that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, my last point is you've got great updated voice recordings from the mayor, but you don't have one from Councilwoman Santana in Spanish.
Oh,
So we have got to get her back into the booth.
Okay, we'll work
to
on that.
update her Spanish recordings.
Yes, sir.
Because the mayor's recordings they're great. They're kind of innovative, a little edgy. They catch your attention. So we've got to update Councilwoman Santana's Spanish recording.
Let's make a note of that.
Okay, note taken?
Yes, thank you.
Alrighty, open up to the committee. I'm going to start with my vice chair, Councilman Slife.
Okay. Thank you for being here. And, it's exciting. The TMDP is exciting. But I have to just give my personal opinion that I think Hopkins is a very well-run airport currently. And I had an hour-and-a-half layover on the way back from Tampa in Charlotte. And let me just say, whatever company they worked with to consult on how much space they need, I think decided the number of lifeboats on the Titanic. There's nowhere to sit.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to eat. There's not a single, I spent an hour and a half just lapping the terminal because there was literally nowhere to stop. It was just a mass of people. So I'm not saying that Hopkins is flawless, but I find it to be a much more relaxing, accommodating environment than many of the other airports I travel through. And I will say it always blows my mind that some of those congested airports rate higher on this customer experience because I find them to be appalling places where humans are treated like cattle. That is just my opinion.
So
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. I will say it's interesting with Charlotte in particular. American Airlines is the main hub carrier there. It was Piedmont prior to, then U.S. Air, U.S. Airways, now American, and they have grown their presence in Charlotte tremendously. And I think that many parts of that airport have existed for decades, similar to ours, and some may be undersized for the demand that's been placed on the facility because of all of the flights that airlines are putting into the airport, especially for the hub operation. So yes, that's one of the airports that does tend to get a lot of activity because American is really focused on growing Charlotte these days.
Sure, and my biased opinion of that is that as an airport that's been dehubbed, is that the airline industry has decided, instead of prioritizing customer experience, to limit the number of facilities, treat humans like cattle, maximize their revenues so that rich people can be richer and not pay taxes. But we'll leave that there. It's just what I think. I want to get back. So within the organizational chart, I know that there's the role of the Assistant Director of Marketing, Communications, and Customer Experience.
Yes.
I'd love to know more about that role's engagement with non-airport, like the vendors, with TSA. So I'm coming through Hopkins. Okay, so knock on Hopkins. Coming through Hopkins to fly to Tampa, and the TSA agent is yelling at people saying, put this stuff down. Why aren't you listening? This isn't hard. Are you guys dumb? And I'm thinking, it took everything within me not to lose my temper on him because that reflects back on us.
Absolutely.
And we're not the people doing it. So how do we work with vendors, the airlines for when we have baggage issues, and TSA and whomever to sort of build this wider organizational airport culture of hospitality and service, so that we are not having to explain to people that we're sorry that your bags were delayed 30 minutes.
Right.
That wasn't our fault. That there's already this kind of accommodating culture across everybody who works at the airport, whether they're employed by the city of Cleveland or not.
So I certainly appreciate that question, and I would say that we had some conversation around this recently with actually J.D. Power, We met with them. We talked about the results of that effort and how we ranked and understanding more about that. And we're now looking into ways that things that we can implement to fare better. But one of the categories is essentially the airport experience from the people that the customer encounters. And it's just an umbrella term because who, what people? Likely not port control staff. It's TSA, it's the airlines, it's the concessionaires. Those are really the main groups, right? So we may be looking at an opportunity to provide customer service training for the airport as a whole. That's not something that that we necessarily have planned today, but I do know some of my colleagues I've spoken to that have done that in the past. It's just in the vein of trying to get everyone to that level of consistency in terms of delivering customer service, good customer service, being courteous, gracious, kind, respectful, those types of things. So it really trickles down from us to all of our in-terminal stakeholders that have a role to play in the customer experience. And so that's an area where we may want to place greater focus going forward, especially as we get busier. And it may, at times of the day, become a little more stressful. And so it would be, I think, a worthy investment for us to look at investment in time initially, to look at how we can do better as a collective at the airport in serving customers.
You're in charge.
Well, I like to be respectful. You have the floor. And on that point, are we able to request funding from TSA to help with that? I mean, if we're training their people.
Likely not. Okay. Likely not. But at one point I did also want to make is, and this is not in the sort of the relations, the interactions between TSA and customers. But one thing that we're working on right now, which we expect to have online in about a year, is an expansion of one of our screening checkpoints. We're working on that right now and looking to add a couple of additional lanes to help with the time that it takes for customers to clear screening. And so while that, again, doesn't go directly to the service and the interaction with the TSA staff, it can help from an airport perspective in terms of getting through TSA screening more efficiently and being able to move on and utilize those services and be at your gate before boarding, all those things that do make a difference. But I take your comment seriously, and we will look at how we may be able to approach that from the standpoint of all of us. What can we do as sort of the airport family to treat our other family, our customers, better?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Dennis.
Just to add to that too, I certainly agree with everything Director said, but also I think there's an opportunity here in the TMDP coming up that we're going to have to do a very good job of communication with all of our stakeholders to coordinate what's going to be happening in the TMDP. There's going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of things moving around as different things are being reconstructed and renovated. And so we have an opportunity in that increased communication with all of our stakeholders to do just that and do better in terms of collectively how we create that customer experience. So.
Thank you. And I had latched onto that one role just because I guess I would hope that we're able to create a system where if a federal employee, a TSA agent, is insulting customers, that there's a way for that complaint to be given to the airport, and for the airport to go to TSA and say, tell your guy he needs, like, this that's not acceptable to you, that's not acceptable to us.
Yes.
And I think people just feel powerless and they don't understand how the system works. And I think the flip side is, if I have great service at the Dunkin' Donuts in the airport, I'd love to be able to find a way to, like, recognize people who are doing good work. And you said that, you know, I always try to make an effort to thank people that are the custodial staff, and like find ways to make people feel that they aren't just a cog in the machine, but that they are part of what our larger mission is. And if there's ways that we could sort of elevate their experience and our ability to be forthcoming with our thanks, maybe that would help. It would be appreciative, but also helpful.
Agreed.
Yeah. One more question on sort of the non-Cleveland employees at the airport. How have we, in the past, and how could we kind of use that as a pipeline for our own employment? I think of when I lived in the DC area and they had these advertisements on the DC Metro for security clearance jobs. So you already had to have a security clearance to get the job, you know, so it was useless for me because I didn't have a security clearance. But if you've already badged to get into the airport, you clearly have already overcome one of the hurdles that I think we face. So how can we sort of take that individual, maybe working job at, you know, of concessionaire, and say, have you considered a career, and build them up into our pipeline as a public employee?
Excellent question. And we have a job center office, if you will, that is in the terminal, the baggage claim, where people can go to get more information about jobs, about opportunities. But we've also partnered with Arizona Alliance in the last few months to have, I believe, 2 job fairs that have taken place at the airport. And so those have been well publicized, both on airport as well as off airport within the community. And there have been a number of employers, airport employers, that have come out and have tables to talk about their employment opportunities and to generate interest. And those kinds of things are great for those who are already badged. Also, many times they know, they hear through even word of mouth that there's an opportunity someplace else. And I think you're exactly right, though. They're a step ahead if they already have a badge. They already have that clearance. It's one of those key steps that, you know, would be easier for them to clear in moving employment from one to another. So yeah, we do have those opportunities, and we have participated in those job fairs as well, and we intend to continue to do so.
Sure. And I'll just say to my colleagues, I think the ability to kind of take that captive audience and ideally get them into roles is another reason why the airport should be thought of in these conversations about how to maybe evolve human resources within the enterprise funds, so that we have a nimbleness to say, like, hey, this job is open now and you are already cleared, oh, you're interested, and try to fill our positions more quickly. One more question, then a comment. I assume that the underserved markets, that map that was shown, is sort of the work product of Councilman McCormick's question about how we use data to define sort of where people are traveling.
Correct.
Essentially. On the international side, could you kind of comment, and I know there's pending legislation related to Aer Lingus, but are there data on how, and from what I've understood, it's been more successful than it had been anticipated, but are there data to glean from that about how people are using Dublin as a layover point versus, I know there's many people that, you know, are eager to go to Dublin as the destination in and of itself, and sort of, are there ways that we could maybe build out our international destinations based on trend lines of where we see people traveling today? And is the success of Aer Lingus a demonstration to the industry that Cleveland is a viable location for especially transatlantic routes?
So Aer Lingus is 18 months in now to its Dublin service into Cleveland, and we do have the data on that traffic that they've generated. We do have the ability to understand what portion of that traffic is local, just going between Cleveland and Dublin, and points beyond. and to where, and also, quite frankly, across any other hubs other than Dublin to points across the pond or going south to the Caribbean or South America. So yes, I mean, I think that the existence of the Aer Lingus service and the longevity of it, I think, is the importance to see that the strength of the demand for the service continues to be strong. That will certainly help. The best thing, in my opinion, for us to see initially is growth in the frequency of that service with Aer Lingus, because that demonstrates to us in terms of our future efforts as well as to other carriers that the service must be performing to a level that warrants investing additional aircraft time into the route. So that's something that we will continue to watch very closely. I think that that conversation was 6 or 7 years in the making. So typically, those routes don't come along quickly. Even domestic ones can take years. So we'll continue to watch Aer Lingus very closely. I do think that as long as they continue to do well, that it gives us a better opportunity to talk up the demand between Cleveland and Europe. And we do attend air service business development events, several of those each year, where that can be part of the conversation about what we see as opportunity going forward. And then you learn more also from the air carrier's perspective about what they see as opportunities. A lot can depend upon, quite frankly, the Aer Lingus service operating with the aircraft size that they do. I think that is the reason that that service is doing as well as it is, because it's not a 300-seat aircraft. It's a 180-seat aircraft. It's still not up to daily, so if it steps up from 4 to 5 to 6, that's showing a clear path to growth, that there is more demand to support that. But that type of aircraft, I would say, it's coming online with more and more airlines. I believe Iberia just took on the A321 XLR. I think it's Iberia. And so they are going to be flying that aircraft across the Atlantic to North America. So longer, thinner routes with appropriately sized aircraft, and those aircraft are out there in the market. Those are the kind of carriers that I think we'll be watching closely and wanting to have further conversations about the future. Not necessarily right now, but the future, because typically it takes years anyway to bring those kind of routes to fruition.
Yeah. Okay, that's great, and I think it's an area of interest for many of us, and
Absolutely.
And even just the data on where people are traveling, I think is interesting data, sort of back on kind of our own region, and I've told Councilman McCormick we seem to have, I didn't know, a much larger Brazilian population in Northeast Ohio than I thought. So how many people are actually flying, and where do we, and what can we learn about ourselves to help kind of become a more welcoming community,
And
to
I was gonna
recognize who's here based on where people are coming and going from.
Also directional, right? In the traffic that is, what is the balance of traffic on Aer Lingus, for instance, U.S.-based going there versus Europeans coming here. So we have that information as well, and that's helpful, certainly from an inbound perspective, to understand how Europeans are viewing the service to Cleveland, how they're utilizing it, and that's something that their airlines are typically liking to see a balance and showing growth on both sides of the market, if at all possible. And I think that is happening with Aer Lingus.
Thank you. And then my closing comment, I agree wholeheartedly on the Spanish announcement. My other thought of announcements has been, though, if we were able to get some Cleveland celebrities, like real celebrities, not like Cleveland, but in addition to Jasmine, not people who are locally known, but announcements like does anyone want to call Halle Berry and say to give the airport a flavor of people talking up the region, and we've talked about part of the TMDP is giving the airport a sense of this is Cleveland, and I've thought could we build that into sort of the announcement systems and have people maybe with external credibility helping talk up our hometown, was my thought.
Certainly something
Yeah.
for us to consider.
Call Halle Berry.
Yeah.
He's got her number.
So, excellent idea. And I think we're going to be looking at every avenue that we can pursue to really talk up, especially as it comes time for us to formalize the TMDP and start to socialize that with the community. It would be great to build the excitement on many levels, and communicating that to all, both in the airport and within the market as a whole, to inform and advise. So, great suggestion, something that we can look further into for future efforts in terms of our marketing.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Councilman Slife. Additional questions, comments for the Director and his team regarding airport operations?
No.
Yes, Councilman Kelly.
Through the chair to the director, thank you. You brothers Slife and McCormick had a lot of great questions. I'm not part of this committee, but I wanted to be here. I learned a lot. I really feel the airport is one of the bookends to make Cleveland successful. It looks like you have quite a lot on your plate. I appreciate that. You look tired. I appreciate that. All of us here are tired. But I'm listening to this. First of all, maybe I don't know if you've had an opportunity to meet with the CEO of CMSD as far as jobs are concerned. I think that would be beneficial. And did I hear you have $3.5 billion? Is that what's going on, or 2 point total for the construction?
Through the chair to the councilperson. There is no dollar amount that has been determined at this point. In the master plan, what was reflected, and we at the table last year, through what we call PAL 5, it was showing like a $2.9 billion investment. But, for the purposes of what we're discussing now, we're really talking about the nearer term improvements.
Okay.
But there hasn't been a specific dollar amount placed on that. It's more around what we ultimately align on with the airlines in terms of facilities, the balance of new construction versus renovation, and then collectively the scope of the program, and through that, what is the amount of the investment that it will require to execute on the program. But no specific number has been settled on or spoken to publicly at this time.
Thank you, Director. To the chair, to the director, then when we focus on jobs, we're all concerned about that, and I think meeting with the CEO of CMSD might be helpful. I don't know if you've met with the head of the building trades yet, but that would probably be helpful too. The building trades, everyone's equal. Man, woman, polka dot, German Shepherd, you all get the same hourly rate, you get the same benefits, and it's one of the levelings.
Through the chair to the councilperson, yes. Certainly, as we look specifically at the TMDP, it's going to be incumbent upon us to seek out all avenues to generate the amount of support that will be needed to physically build. And so, yes, I think that all those efforts are going to be made going forward. And I appreciate your suggestions, not only for the future, but also for the near term.
Thank you, Tucker. To the chair, to the director. You guys are a city. You employ everybody that a city does, so I appreciate you thinking of that. I know when we're going overseas or going different places, I think a lot of it is that we have people coming back here, too. I don't know exactly how easy, it's probably not that you do it, but I know that we're looking at that hotel and some different things, and we have a great health facility with Cleveland Metro. So I would be hoping that whatever you're doing with the airports here, there's a correlation with the mayor's people that do that, and with some of these, because like you said, now's the future. Now's the time to look at it. And, it looks exciting with some of the things that you're looking to do. I appreciate it. I've been waiting. I know you're doing the bathrooms. That's good. I hope you have paper towels so people can wipe things off and not just dryers. This has been very informative. I really have high hopes for our airport. I really think that if we have an airport where a business can get on a plane and go to where they want to go, and we have an educated youth here that we really can pick up here, and I think you're doing it. Anything that I might be doing as a councilman, I'm certainly 100% for you. So I want to thank you. Thank you.
Through the chair to the councilperson, thank you for your comments and for your optimism and enthusiasm. I share that. I know that there are areas that we are doing well in. There are others where we need more effort and more support, frankly, and we're getting there in those areas as well. And it's going to be important for us to do as good of a job as we can in these gap years, let's call them, between now and when newer modernized facilities come on board, because during that time the airport will continue to get busier. And so we have to get up to speed now. It's not so much planning for 5 years from now, because we're living in today while planning for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director. Appreciate that. And Councilman, appreciate you attending our committee today as well. Committee of the whole and attention to the airport. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilwoman Gray.
Thank you. I know I was out from the presentation earlier, but I just have one question. You know, what will be replacing the Sheraton Hotel? Chair to the director. That question was asked while we were out of town, and I did not have an answer. So
great question, Director.
Certainly, through the chair to the councilperson. So the current plan is to utilize that site for public parking. So that's one of the areas that we are deficient in. We need more public parking. The question is, when will that come online? We may need that space for other things in the near term, but ultimately it will be utilized for public parking, likely surface parking initially. Years into the future, you could turn a surface lot into a garage, a deck, but basically looking at using that area for public parking in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate that. And Director, I want to echo Councilman Kelly's comments as well. We thank you for being here today, your team. Also recognizing Erin, who, by the way, was very consistent with me to get this legislation. I want you to know that. She was on my behind about this legislation. So the fact that the legislation wasn't heard today was not at all her fault. She was on it. So I want to give her a shout out. But Director, you've been here for 18 months. We're really thankful for your leadership, your commitment to the airport. We have faith in your leadership and in your team. Thanks to the team members who've been working a couple jobs, get paid for one, working a couple as you staff up your executive team.
Correct.
We understand, we appreciate that. And,
Yes.
you know, I love Cleveland's airport. I'm not afraid to say that, and I've traveled to quite a few airports. Does she need love and updates? Absolutely, but I think the future is bright when it comes to our passenger numbers, when it comes to the leadership team in place at the airport, when it comes to future investment coming down the line with the TMDP. So I'm really excited about the future of the airport and to really kind of dig in on the work that's going to be needed to make sure that her potential is optimized for Cleveland and the region. And again, really glad to work with this team on a regular basis that is leading the airport. So thank you, and please share this committee's thanks to all of your employees that are doing all sorts of work at the airport to make sure it stays clean and operating and moving on the day. Please know that we recognize them and thank them as well for their hard work to keep the airport moving. So
Thank you, and we appreciate your support as we put in that work and that effort going forward.
absolutely. All right, Madam Chair, with that, this committee of the whole for port control operations is adjourned. Thank you.